All right, good morning, everyone. We are, it's Monday, March 7th, and we're gathered electronically for the purposes of a public hearing and a committee briefing and language review for the Environment and Natural Resources Committee of the Maine State Legislature. And we will have our proceedings broadcast via YouTube and recorded there. And we'll start with introductions from committee members. Representative Ziegler.
You always wait to see if I'm ready, don't you? I'm Representative Paige Ziegler from District 96, Waldo County. That includes the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Moore, Palermo, and Searsmont.
Representative Bell.
Good morning, Art Bell. I am from Yarmouth and I represent House District 47, which is Yarmouth, Chesapeake, and Long Island. And it feels like spring here today.
Representative Boyle.
Good morning. My name is Jim Boyle. I live in Gorham and I represent District 27, the eastern half of Gorham and northern Scarborough.
Representative Bloom.
I'm Lydia Bloom. I represent House District 3 in York.
Representative Hanley.
Yes, good morning. I'm Jeff Hanley. I represent District 87, which are the towns of Pittston, Alna, Wiscasset, and Randolph.
Representative O'Connor.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Beth O'Connor. I represent the individuals of House District 5, which is Berwick and part of North Berwick.
Senator Bennett.
Good morning. I'm Rick Bennett. I have the honor and privilege of serving people of 13 towns in Western Maine, the Lakes region of Cumberland County, and the Oxford Hills and Greater Freiburg area.
Senator Carney.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ann Carney. I represent Senate District 29, which includes South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, and a little bit of Scarborough.
And my co-chair, Representative Tucker.
Thank you. My name is Ralph Tucker. I represent half of Brunswick, House District 50. Thank you.
My name is Stacy Brenner. I am the senator from Senate District 30, and I represent all of Gorham, most of Scarborough, and part of Buxton. This morning, we're going to go in this order. We're going to hear testimony for LD 866 and then LD 259. Then we'll have a report on AFFF firefighting foam from LD 1505 from last session. And then we'll complete our language review for LD 1639. One thing I want to mention for folks is that tomorrow at 2 p.m. we have our budget hearing with AFA. And for committee members' purposes, if you're wondering where your link is for the meeting, you haven't received it yet. You'll get it an hour before. So stay tuned in your mailbox for your link for the budget hearing. And with that, I will, let's see, Marianne and McMaster's our clerk, and Dan Tartikoff is our OPLA analyst. Thank you both for being here. And whoops, before we go any further, we have Representative Dudera, so we'll give her a minute to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My apologies for being a little bit late. I am Vicki Dudera. I represent the towns of Camden, Rockport, and Islesboro, which is District 94 for the main house. Thank you.
And Marianne, can you let me know if we have our bill sponsor here for LD 866 yet?
I am trying to figure this out. It may be.
Is he on the phone?
He may be on the phone.
Okay, let's see if we can. Representative Lyford, is that you on the phone? Representative Lyford, if it is you on the phone, we can't hear you because I think you might be muted. I don't,
Yeah, I'm at a loss here. I'm sorry.
does anyone on the committee have the ability to text or call Representative Lyford just to check in and see if he's going to join us to introduce his bill? Representative, do you by chance have the ability to connect with him?
I'm going to call the House Republican office, see if I can get some contact from his aide.
Okay.
I'm dialing him right now.
Okay, I think the phone is not.
I have a different phone number.
Hello.
Hey, Peter, this is Beth O'Connor. Are you going to be joining us this morning?
Beth,
You're still trying to get in. All right. Do you want me to see if we can screen share the bill and we'll just introduce it, myself or Representative Hanley? Okay, I will ask the senator. I have you on speakerphone right now. Maybe that will work.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, I will explain this to the committee and I will call you back. Bye-bye. Hi, as you just heard, I got in touch with him. His phone was going in and out. He could not, he was having a hard time connecting. If I do not have a copy of the bill in front of me, I don't know if Representative Hanley does and maybe would like to present it.
Give me a minute. I'll get a copy up on the other screen and then I'll try to present it. If that'll be give me 30 seconds here. Hold on.
Sure. So for folks who are just joining us over in the attendee space, we're just taking a moment to find our way with the bill introduction because Representative Lyford is having some challenges connecting to the meeting this morning to introduce the bill.
It's coming. We're loading a little slow here. Hold on. There we go. I don't have the most recent version. I have only the concept draft language. So, but I can introduce it as that, and unless someone can find.
I'm sorry. I just talked to his aide and he has, been in touch. He's got to go outside to use the phone. I've sent him the link a couple times. The aide sent him the link. We're kind of up in the air and don't know what to do.
Can I get the, can I get a copy of the current version of it? I'm on the website, the legislative website, and I don't. It only has the concept draft language.
It's in the public testimony. I will
Okay,
share the link.
maybe that's the way to go.
I'll put it in the chat for you. You see it down there in the chat?
Hold on. I'm using two screens at once, Senator, so I'm at a disadvantage here. Yeah. Okay. This is the proposed amendment to the bill. Let me get through the title. There is no title. Wow. There is no title on that amended version, so.
Representative Hanley, the title for LD 866 is an act concerning advanced refrigeration technology.
Okay. Well, why don't I stop and we'll work it from there. Would that be all right?
Sure, that's perfect.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Hanley, State Representative from District 87. I'm here to introduce the LD 866, which is an act concerning advanced refrigeration technology. The overall desire and impact of this bill is to change the way we look at electrical installations in the National Electric Code when dealing with the new types of technologies that go into massive refrigeration components, and mainly your stores and large grocery chains and that other facilities that refrigerate in huge spaces. It will concern the National Electric Code because of the inspection requirements, LAUL listing of components as they're being built. And this bill basically asks for two things: that it will allow the inspection of electrical components after installation on site. In other words, it used to be that the components would have to be inspected in the shop as they were being built, but now things are being built in a modular fashion, and that's the most effective way to do it. And then you take that module and install it at the facility, and that's when the electrical inspection should take place. The second part of the bill also asks for a refund or credit to the installing facility, consummate with the same type of credits that are given to solar installations for their carbon reduction footprint. As you'll see, I think, as some of the testimony that's about to be given to you, you'll see that there is a massive reduction in energy use and the release of these refrigerants by this new technology. So with that, I'll stop my presentation and ask for any other participants to come forward and make their statements.
Thank you, Representative Hanley. Any comments or questions from the committee members for the representative? Okay. Nate Pinchett, I appreciate that, Representative Hanley. Nice job.
Yeah, that was all on the wing right there. I will say that in my previous life as a welder and a pipe fitter, I worked on this exact type of material we're talking about. Huge systems that were use massive amounts of refrigerants, and the proposed technology that's what we're about to hear about is the same kind of stuff I worked on. And Ian, that was 15 years ago. And even then, we discovered that switching over to stainless steel piping and welding everything with a tungsten inert gas welding procedure, that you eliminated leaks completely. And that's the big thing. But the other thing is the new modular designs. I'm sure, I think Mr. Lebrecht is standing by to do testimony on this. So I'll let him take it from there. Thank you, Senator.
Yep. All right, folks in the attendee space that are here to speak in favor of LD 866, if you could raise your hand so we could bring you all over to share your testimony. All right. So Mr. So James Lebrecht, Peter Wayne, and Kimberly Cook, in that order.
Unmute. There we go. Let's do video, I assume. There we go. Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
We can. Good morning. Welcome.
Very good. Thank you. I'll try and get this off to a little smoother road. We started off a little rough, but thank you, Representative Hanley. My name is Jim Lebrecht. I'm from Bangor, Maine. I've been working in the refrigeration field for over 50 years, and I developed the first patented system that didn't blow holes in the ozone back in the 80s when CFCs were making a big hole in the ozone. Today, new chemicals pose new problems. And these problems now, as you know, are really adding to the CO2 to our atmosphere. The purpose of this bill is two parts. One, when you're developing technology and you're making a paradigm shift, it requires a tremendous amount of modifications and changes as you're developing the technology. And what complicates that more so than ever in the history of my 50 years of development research work is the pandemic. Just 6 weeks ago, I received disconnect switches for my systems that I ordered 2 years ago. Just at the beginning of the pandemic, Italy was the first state to close down, and I had to redesign the system to take on different disconnect switches. And then as of 6 weeks ago, after it's all redesigned, I get a great big package in with new disconnect switches. I had vessels made in Germany that they stopped making because of the pandemic, and I had to change to other types of heat exchangers. So my point is that I had to continuously redefine and re-engineer other components that do the same job. And there's no way you can go and get the stuff here UL approved with all these different versions. And in my earlier days in development, if you see my testimony on the second picture, do you guys have my testimony in front of you by any chance?
We sure do.
Okay. So if you look at the second page, it shows a great big room that I'm building. Those rooms were all of the electric power for the building, all of the cogeneration, all of the energy recovery, all the control work, everything for that big supermarket. And all of those were inspected right here by state inspectors right at my shop, but they don't longer do that anymore. They just require UL sticker. Well, UL takes a very long time to get, and we use all UL components, all the power components to UL. If this was being built in the field, an electrical inspector could check it out. But if it's built in a factory or at a shop, then they want a UL sticker on it. Well, I don't believe we're going to have enough time with the variation of products that we get in from around the world to be able to have the units built and sent out to UL for them to put a sticker on it before the store has to open. And we can't hold up a multi-million-dollar or multi-million-dollar projects. So I'm asking that we just get back to the old days where an electrical inspector of proper jurisdiction can come out and check it like we used to do back in the old days. And that's all he has to do is to assure that there is no substantial risk of harm to people or property. That's the whole key idea of UL or ETL or CSA or any of these testing agencies. These are all, it's a very simple, a electrical inspector could do this in less than just a few minutes. It doesn't take very long at all. You can see it's all UL components. He knows the wire sizes, and he can see that it's not only a safe unit, but a very clean unit. And we can't wait another year to go through UL and hold up supermarkets and customers. And this technology is a lot of people around the country are looking at this technology to move this industry ahead. Supermarkets are one of the biggest users of these super potent chemicals. This is going to have a major impact on that industry, and it's going to have a major impact on manufacturing right up here in Maine, and the technology is coming out of Maine. So we're not asking for a big, I'm not asking for $1 million. I'm not asking for anybody to risk any safety, just asking that the electrical examining board is able to do what they used to do, and that is when the system gets put out in the field, they can come and kick the tires and check it out. I think if you read my testimony, you can see how massive a job it is to take. In the first picture, great big complicated rooms, and that room is just a piece of an overall system. Then that has to integrate with many other systems. And so we're reduced that down to little boxes with just a teeny charger refrigerant. And a lot of the heat transfer takes place in water. It doesn't even use refrigerant. This is going to have a major impact on these super potent chemicals. So I hope that the committee can help us out by assuring us that that electrical inspectors will be able to just do a field test and not have to rely on UL for development systems.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Representative Dudera has a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lebrecq. I remember when you gave us your presentation last year. It's nice to see you again. I'm questioning, so this is brand new technology. So this is not happening anywhere else in the country. That would be question number one. And question number two would be, you're saying that basically that electricians can do this with a small amount of training, they'll be able to handle it. So, we won't be lacking for people who can do these inspections. But I guess that's my first question is this is brand new technology that is not being used anyplace else in the country? Thanks.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And the next person to give testimony is a person that worked for some of the biggest supermarket chains in the world, and he worked all over the world, and he investigated our system, and I think he'll be able to testify to you that there's nothing else anywhere in the world close to this technology. And then as far as they don't need any training, you don't have to train electrical inspector. This is just common stuff for him to see that circuit breakers and contactors and terminal blocks and wire size and stuff. It's all stuff they do every day. Like I said, if this was built in the field, same components, but built in the field with an electrician doing it there, they would have to inspect it. But if it comes in a box, then they say, oh, we want a UL sticker. So I'm saying, let's let the electrical inspector okay it out in the field. We will get UL eventually, but we can't come in with 6 different configurations of components. For instance, just last week, I got notice that it's 22 more weeks before I get a water pump in, a special type of water pump that I have that varies in speed to vary the water flow. Well, I can't wait 22 weeks, so I had to change to one where I'm going to have to turn it on and off to control the flow. Well, just that one little change would be it would throw the UL off. The UL sticker would not be any good. So I have to, and that's one thing. The plate heat exchangers we have one built with, right now with a certain configuration, and we had to change that configuration because it was going to take 48 weeks to get exactly what I want. So I had to change the configuration some with a different component, and so I could get it within another 4 weeks from now. Well, you can't take all these variations to UL. They're all safe, all the components are UL tested. So it's just a matter of an electrical inspector. If there was something obvious, he would be able to see it if it was something obviously unsafe. So I don't
Thank
want.
you.
Good.
I got it. That perfectly answers my question. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. LeBrecq, for your testimony. Is these inspectors that what you're talking about, they already exist? Is that, I mean, we don't have like to go into training anyone. They already here, they can do the job. Is that so?
No, they have to go to the job anyways to inspect. You're building a new supermarket, electrical inspector, the supermarket contractor electrical contractor has to take out a permit, and then the electrical inspector goes and inspect it. We want to say, let him inspect our unit here as well. Without, he can inspect our unit while he's right there. Geez, I can't believe that.
My question was that we don't need any new personnel. They already exist. They can do the job now.
That's right. No, there is, he would just do it while he's right there. It would be no problem at all. Very simple.
Another question, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, the second component of your bill, this bill was to have a type of refund or credit for the installation of these new devices. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so if you looked at my testimony, I say there's a 16x cost to benefit ratio. So for every dollar you spend in a product like this, you get 16 times more carbon savings than if you put that same dollar in solar. So if you put $1 million into this technology, you have to put 16 million in solar panels to get you the same equivalent offset. So what I was pointing out is that there is some major environmental benefits. So the people buying these should be able to get CO2 credits just like the solar people do.
Anything else?
Go ahead. It shouldn't be just limited to solar and wind when you have other technologies that are beneficial.
Thank you. Anything else, Representative Hanley?
No, thank you. That was what I needed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, James LeBrecq, for your testimony. What would be helpful for me for the work session is if you could share the footnotes for the sources for the carbon savings with the greenhouse gases. That would be really helpful. Maybe you can pass those on to Dan Tartikoff.
I have them all in slides. I'll send it to him.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Peter Waning.
Can you hear me?
We can. You're welcome to share your screen as well if you'd like to.
Okay, let's start video. There you go. Hi, good morning.
Welcome.
Yeah, my name is Peter Waning. I've been in the construction industry for over 35 years. I have a background in engineering. I worked for Del Hayes, as everyone knows, they are the Hannaford line of grocery stores. But I managed the design engineering, particularly the electrical, mechanical design portions of the building. I constructed these buildings up and down the Eastern Seaboard and also internationally. So I have a very, very large background in constructing, managing, and getting really into the nuts and bolts of how these systems are designed, their electrical capacity and usage, their gas capacity and usage, and their complexity and their cost. I got introduced to Jim LeBrecq with Flexware several years ago. And is everything on? Can you hear me? Okay. And I've been looking at the system. Actually, I'm constructing a building right now, which I'm hoping to have it installed as part of the grocery store base building cooling system. It's a phenomenal system. It has... if you're looking at environmentally being responsible, cost-wise, being responsible to the environment. These systems, or his system, is one of its type in the world. It has half the gas consumption, half the electrical consumption. It's actually manufactured in Maine intellectual property. And it's actually going to be manufactured in Maine with all Maine local people here. It's a phenomenal system. It costs 1/3 the cost of a typical grocery store system. It has virtually no noise pollution associated with it. As you know, most grocery stores, you live in and around or in back of them. The compressor systems are very, very loud, and you can hear them even from quite a distance away. This system, you can actually walk in the room and you hear nothing. Anyway, it's a fantastic system. It's something that I've never seen. It takes the place. A lot of the new grocery stores are building something called transcritical gas systems, which are supposedly the be all and end all, but they cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're very complex. They require a lot of specialists to come in and manage them, to manage the control aspect of it, the installation aspect of it. These can be done with local inspectors. They can come in and look at it. It's not that complicated at all. There's a lot of technology in it, but the complexity part of it, a local inspector could look at the system, or any master electrician, a residential master electrician, could wire this thing and have it up and have it running. They take a very short window to produce, as opposed to a year or 2 years to produce a standard grocery store system. These can be done in a month or two. As Jim spoke about, one of the things about it is all the parts and pieces of the gear are all UL rated, and then you put them in a box and you want to mount them to the side of a cooler. Now UL wants to have another whole process to come back through and already rate the system and the gear that's already rated. It's kind of like a duplicity in inspections, whereas a local inspector, I mean, they know what to look at. A master electrician knows how to wire these things. They're very, very straightforward. And it would be great if this bill could pass. It would be phenomenal for the environment, phenomenal for the consumption of these stores. Something that Jim didn't touch on is if you install one of these systems, because of the low cost and actually low maintenance, they don't lose any gas, that they can actually lower their food costs for the local people. One of the mile markers that they choose when they are, and Hannaford did this as well, they looked at how much the store consumed in electricity costs, and that was pushed back onto the price of food, and gas cost, and the systems cost, the building cost. If you go to different Hannaford stores, you wonder why some groceries cost you more in one store versus another one. What's basically borne in as part of the cost of the building. So in any event, it's a very low cost system. Low maintenance. It's an incredible system. It's very, very environmentally responsible, and it is low consumption. So I looking forward to installing one of these in a building. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a game changer. I do have a lot of contacts worldwide, and a lot of major chains are going to be looking at the system and wanting it in the stores. It's that advanced. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Representative Dudera has a question for you.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Chair Brenner. Mr. Waning, I'm wondering, and I can't see, was it Waning or Waring? I'm sorry.
Waning, like the moon.
I need my little glasses on, I think. Do you see any issues with installing a system that isn't UL certified? I mean, I imagine that Underwriters Laboratory provides some sort of a stamp of approval, or is there any kind of a liability issue or insurance issue if you, God forbid, something was installed and a fire happened or something like that?
Well, I mean, I've done a lot of these systems, similar types, and had run into UL ratings before. Carrier is a famous one. They put a disconnect, not to explain what a disconnect is, a piece of equipment inside the unit. Sometimes they make you take it out of the unit and bolt it on the exterior of it. That would kick off UL. You have to come back through and re-inspect the entire unit again. After it's already inspected, the actual piece of gear already has UL rating on it. So you're inspecting things and rating things that you've already been through a very rigorous program to inspect and rate. It's just you put them together and all of a sudden they want to re-rate it and re-look at it again. No, I don't. And a normal inspector, these are very commonplace. normal, I say normal, someone an electrician who wired your house could look at this, understand it, and install it, and it would be very competent. So all the parts and pieces are already UL rated. It's just when it's like another whole layer of inspections on top of inspections, which is self-defeating. I mean, the poor owner, I was in New York City just a year and a half ago, and they did just that. They took the disconnect and they put it on the outside. We had to call UL, install the building construction by 5 months, and then cost them $25,000 a unit for moving something 8 inches when it was already, and if you look at the bottom of the disconnect, they had a UL rating already on it. So it was kind of self-defeating, and it's just how the process has evolved over the years, as Jim talked about. Years ago, the local inspector could look at this and say, yeah, all the breakers are UL rated, all the parts and pieces are UL rated. Why do you need, and I'm, the AHA, their authority having jurisdiction on the system, they have to sign off on it. And they're competent people. Obviously, they wouldn't be doing that for a living. And a master electrician has to have years of training and whatnot to get that rating. And they're not going to put anything in a system that's going to, they obviously have insurance as well. They're not going to do anything that's going to make that more liable for themselves either. So it's just another layer of inspections.
Okay, well, thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to just follow up and just.
Sure.
And you may not be the correct person to answer this particular aspect of the question, Mr. Wayne, but I'm just, where this is a federal licensing program, I don't know, whether there's precedent to install things that are not correctly federally licensed, as onerous as it may be, as crazy as it may be. These things are there for a reason, and sometimes it's it's certainly a pain in the neck, and we all roll our eyeballs, but
Sure.
they're there for a reason. And I guess I'm just wondering whether we set ourselves up for a real can of worms if we're approving something that hasn't gone through the correct federal loopholes, or not loopholes, but regulations, let's say that. Thanks.
Yep.
Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Waning. I like the sound of this. I mean, being 16 times more efficient, that's awesome. And the fact that you're testifying on behalf of a company that here in Maine that can use it. I'm interested in the second part of the second section of the bill regarding basically a credit or funds from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Trust Fund. And I want to understand if I didn't hear you say that your company would need this credit in order to purchase the system. I heard you say it's cost effective, it's efficient, all those things are excellent, and that's the way we're, want to move as a society. But would Hannaford or Delhaize purchase the system? Maybe it's one store, I think you said. Would there be other stores that you need this second part, the tax credit, or not tax, but the trust fund allocation in order to purchase the system to make that economic decision?
Well, first of all, I'm not working for Delhaize. I'm working for a private developer right now, and I worked there for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm not speaking for Delhaize, but this is more of an incentive part of the bill that it's like your electrical bill. You sign up for NextEra, they give you a 15% off on your electrical bill. This would be the same thing for owners. Obviously, there is a cost borne to getting rid of the existing equipment that they have in their stores and going with a brand new system if they were going to remodel or install one. And it's an incentive for them to, like anything else, they get if they consume a lot of power off the grid, CMP, because they consume so much, they get incentive off of that. If they buy LP gas, but they buy so many thousands of gallons a year, the LP gas supplier, like Dead River, will give them an incentive to obviously keep purchasing gas from them. And this is right along the same lines of everything else that they would get an incentive to buy and invest in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Peter Waning, for joining us. Next up, I believe, is Kimberly Cook. Good morning. Nice to see you over here.
Morning. Yes. And from the same location, and here I am in a different committee. Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and esteemed members of the committee. I'm Kim Cook. I'm here on behalf of the Wild Blueberry Commission of Maine to testify in favor of LD 866. You will not be hearing anything about UL. And the first part of the bill from me, but you will be hearing about the second part of the bill, which Representative Boyle was just asking about, that we are in strong support of. So let me tell you a little bit about the Wild Blueberry Commission. We work on behalf of Maine's 485 wild blueberry farmers and businesses who grow wild blueberries on approximately 40,000 acres across the state. Last year, we produced over 100 million pounds of Maine wild blueberries. Unlike our major competitor, the cultivated blueberry, Maine's wild blueberries are small and wild. Where high bush blueberries are bred to increase things like shelf life so that you can eat them fresh in the grocery store year round, wild blueberries are not bred and therefore have a short shelf life in their fresh form. We all enjoy them for those brief few weeks in late summer. Because of that, the short shelf life, we freeze approximately 98% of the crop each year. And these berries are stored in commercial freezers here in Maine. And those freezers range from the size of a small walk-in to facilities that are geared to tens of millions of pounds. So like many other agricultural sectors in Maine, we are acutely aware of the impacts of climate change. And in 2020, we lost an estimated 45% of the crop to drought. And recent research shows that wild blueberry fields are warming more quickly than the rest of the state. Our commission identifies as one of our 2022 priorities to support research and innovation that aids climate change adaptation and reduces supply inconsistencies. And we have also identified as a long-term priority to address climate change issues. In short, our industry is experiencing the challenge of climate change and is seeking ways to adapt. Representative Leifer's amendment that he's proposed to this bill adds specificity to the use of the Reggie Trust Fund, and that specificity will authorize the funding for replacing industrial refrigeration products or equipment that have high global warming potential. This bill would be a big help to Maine's wild blueberry producers in reducing greenhouse gas emissions by providing assistance to retrofit existing refrigeration technology with clean, more energy efficient refrigeration technology. It will also help us with the compliance, of course, with LD 266 that was passed last year. So on behalf of the Wild Blueberry Commission, I urge the committee to vote ought to pass, and thank you for the opportunity to present the testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you. I have a statement more than a question. I've been on the Maine Blueberry Tour, and that is an amazing eye-opener of this industry in the state of Maine. And I'd actually forgotten it. I'm glad you came and spoke today because you are absolutely reliant on refrigeration capacity. And this bill will really affect your industry in the future, without any doubt. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much. And yes, please keep an eye open for the tour. Probably not this summer, but the following summer. I think they'll be back on post-pandemic and in the next legislature. So look forward to bringing more of you on that tour.
Yes, thank you. No one should ever miss that tour. If you get a chance, always go.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions for Kimberly Cook? Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to folks that are here to speak in opposition to the legislation. If you could raise your hand. And then we'll go on to folks that are neither for nor against. And I think we have, we're gonna hear from the department next. Hi
Good
there.
morning.
How are you?
Took me a while to figure it out, but we got there. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. I'm Jeffrey Crawford. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Air Quality at the Department of Environmental Protection. And I'm here today commenting neither for nor against LD 866. On June 14th, 2021, Governor Mills signed into law LD 226, an act to limit the use of hydrofluorocarbons to fight climate change. This was enacted as Maine Public Law, Chapter 192 of 2021, and established limitations on the use of certain hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, in specific end-use categories. Some HFCs have been identified as powerful greenhouse gases, and as such, are the focus of a multi-state effort to restrict their use in our efforts to help fight climate change. In addition to establishing statutory prohibitions, Chapter 192 directed the department to promulgate rules implementing these statutory requirements. The department initiated rulemaking on these requirements last October, and on December 16, 2021, the Board of Environmental Protection adopted the department's Chapter 147 hydrofluorocarbons rule, restricting the use of some HFCs in certain end-use categories as of the dates established in statute. As you know, the bill before you has two elements. First, it provides that technical standards adopted to the Maine Electricians Examining Board rules must allow a licensed electrician to install a distributed refrigeration module and related components so long as the electrical inspector of jurisdiction finds that the installation does not pose a substantial risk of danger or injury to property and the public. Second, the proposal amends the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Trust Fund to authorize the allocation of trust funds for assistance in the retrofitting or replacement of existing products and equipment with products or equipment that uses refrigerants would substantially reduce global warming potential. The department has determined that the bill as proposed would not impact the HFC prohibitions as established in either Title 38 or the department's Chapter 147. Thank you for the opportunity to submit these comments, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Where you talk about, the bill talks about substantial risk of danger or injury to the public. And it says essentially that the Electricians Examining Board must allow a licensed electrician to install unless the inspector finds that as long as the inspector finds the installation does not pose a substantial risk of danger or injury to the public, property and the public. Is substantial risk of danger or injury, is that a higher, are there other levels of risk? And you're not electrical, I know, Mr. Crawford, but
I'm certainly not an expert on the electrical code. I believe the proposed bill, in fact, uses that term.
Yeah.
So I think I'd have to defer to somebody who is an expert on the code.
Yeah, and I should have asked maybe Mr. Breck, but I noticed it kind of stuck out in your testimony because it's sort of summarizes it there. And I don't even know, and maybe someone can tell us, is there low, moderate, and substantial, and high and extreme? What are we comparing that substantial risk to others? Because substantial sounds worse than, say, you could install it only if it were only moderate risk or only low risk. So maybe not a question for you in that piece. The second piece, similar to what I asked previously, I'm looking at your testimony and the bill, and the bill would authorize the Reggie Trust Fund to allocate funds. But it says that for equipment that use refrigerants with substantially reduced global warming potential. It doesn't, the bill later in the statute, it talks about cost benefit ratios, not just that the installation of this type of refrigerant system would substantially reduce global warming potential, but that it still has to meet the cost benefit ratio as other trust fund allocations do. So are you concerned that this language might not be, I guess it's a language appropriately worded in the legislation in your view for the department?
Yeah, that's I mean, once again, I hate to defer on that, but I think it's a question best directed to Efficiency Maine Trust. I know Michael Stoddard is not online today, to my knowledge. We can
I
check
do
with
see
him.
I do see
Okay.
him in there, and I was
Yeah.
going to ask him, but I thought since I had the department here too, or we have. that-
Yeah, yeah.
And it is referred in your testimony, so I thought
Sure.
we would touch on it here, but I think we can wait for Mr. Stoddard. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions for Jeffrey Crawford? All right, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And Representative Boyle, I'll let you know that Michael Stoddard will be joining us next, so you can redirect your questions for him after his testimony. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker and members of the committee. My name is Michael Stoddard. I am the Executive Director of the Efficiency Maine Trust. It's nice to see everyone this morning. I see that you've been stealing some of the members of the EUT committee where I spend most of my time. I don't know what's going on in that tug of war, but it looks like you may be winning. I'm happy to be before you today to testify neither for nor against this legislation. And I am speaking exclusively about Section 2 of the bill, which you just referenced previously, the part that would amend the section of the statute that directs the Efficiency Maine Trust about how to spend the funds of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which we pronounce RGGI. And I will be submitting written testimony after this. I'm sorry I did not get it in before the hearing. At present, the RGGI funds are used to provide rebates for weatherizing homes, to upgrade new affordable housing developments to the highest efficiency standards, to help small businesses and public schools install high-performance heat pump systems, and to help the state's industrial sector upgrade the efficiency of its mills and factories. In all cases, these upgrades must pass the cost effectiveness requirement of the trust that Representative Boyle just mentioned, and also other applicable criteria that are in the statute. I do want to clarify something that I heard from prior commenters testifying this morning. We do not use these RGGI funds to give carbon credits to customers for installing solar or wind. That's just not a thing. So it is interesting to compare how effective this reduction of refrigerant leakage might impact greenhouse gas emissions compared to other measures. I think that's a totally valid and useful exercise, but I just wanted you to know that that's not currently a way that we use RGGI dollars. We're not using it for solar rebates or any kind of a carbon credit, and we're not using it for any kind of wind projects. I also wanted to note, just to keep it in perspective, refrigerants that are being discussed here, they don't create greenhouse gas emissions unless and until they're emitted into the air, unless they leak out somehow. And our estimates are that that doesn't happen terribly often or at a very high rate. It happens a little bit. And we are estimating that it constitutes somewhere between 0.3% and 0.9% of the state's annual greenhouse gas emissions. So would it be better to reduce and mitigate those emissions? Absolutely. But it's worth keeping it in perspective how much of the total it constitutes. Finally, I'll just close by saying last year, the trust programs using RGGI dollars, as you know, we have other dollars that we invest as well, but the programs we ran using RGGI dollars were forecasted to achieve about a $5.5 in lifetime savings for every $1 that we invested of the RGGI funds. We also do, as Ms. Cook, who previously commented, mentioned, we do work on commercial and industrial refrigeration systems. They are eligible measures. They achieve energy efficiency savings that is cost effective, and commonly when these upgrades are performed, they may switch refrigerant types. We are seeing that and we are funding that now. And we will continue to do so, so long as it meets all the other criteria of the RGGI statute. But I do want to point out that it's our estimation that we just don't want folks to think that it's possible to just switch from one refrigerant to another and do no other changes to the system. Typically, and I would defer to Representative Hanley, who's a true expert on this, but commonly, if you change refrigerants, you may also need to change elements of the equipment. They will go hand in hand. And so you can't just switch out one fuel. It's not just like switching from, I don't know, ultra gasoline to low test or to high test. They're not interchangeable necessarily. So people should understand that. I guess with that, I will close and I would be happy to answer any questions. I will also just say, Senator Brennan, I know that we have a report that is due to you that you requested last year. And my expectation is that we'll be able to submit that to you before the work session.
Are you referring to the report on appliance standards?
No, I'm referring to a report on high global warming potential refrigerants and leakage.
Great, excellent. Looking forward to that. Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Stone, for coming here. Yes, now, if you, in relation to the question about the use of RGGI funds, if you can demonstrate reduction in energy use, those funds can be used with that criteria, right?
Correct.
Good, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. This legislation isn't about only greenhouse, the gas release of the refrigerants, but also reduction of energy use. So.
Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Mr. Stoddard. You've moved on my screen. There you are. Full disclosure for those who on the committee and others may not know, I was on the board of Efficiency Maine Trust until I ran for and won election to this position. So I do have some familiarity and I've worked closely with Mr. Stoddard and others on the board for close to 3 years, the last 3 years. So I do have some background in at least knowledge of this. And so I think the bill is good. I like it. I want to be more efficient with refrigeration technology. So as long as all the language here works, which is what our role here is in the committee and the legislature, I want to make sure I understand it does work, and the department and the trust are neutral on this. So thank you for bearing with me. Similar to what I had asked previously, the term replacing high global warming potential products with low or lower reduced global warming potential. Is global warming potential, is that term defined in statute somewhere? So that number one, and if it is, would you use that term? Well, my guess is that wouldn't you still use the trust would still give priority to measures with the highest cost benefit ratio, regardless of whether it's, how the term global warming potential is defined. So I know Michael's good at sorting through my rambling questions, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Representative. I don't think you need to change the language in the statute. And I would be pretty reticent to have us engage in a lot more wordsmithing in the statute, because there are a whole bunch of rules that flow out of this. And if you start changing more things, it's going to have a cascading effect on other things. And that's where I start to get uncomfortable, because I would say that this amendment is coming together fairly late in the game with not a lot of notice. I've never seen this amendment until last week. So I'm always a little squeamish when the legislature wants to start amending the RGGI statute. And but I think global warming potential is a well-established and understood adjective. It's really not a question of defining that so much as it is defining how you count the global warming potential. But the EPA does lots of that. They have, by the way, whole proceedings on this exact topic. So there's a lot of work going on at the federal level. There's a lot of work going on in private industry to improve the next generation of refrigerants, and then to adapt all of the next generation of equipment that will use those refrigerants. So there's a lot going on out there in the marketplace and at the federal level, and I think those definitions are fine. I think you don't need to change any of the language in the statute for us to have a way to process these kinds of project proposals and to rank them and determine their eligibility.
May I follow up, Madam
Yeah,
Chair?
please.
When you say we don't need to, in your judgment, it's not necessary to change the language in statute. Do you mean both sections, or that the underlying sections that would be inserted into statute by this amended bill are fine the way they are? Because, and the reason they're fine the way they are, as I understand it, is that the trust already uses benefit to cost ratio and highest benefit to cost ratio as the standard.
That is what I meant, Representative. And I'm limiting my comments to section 2 of the amendment. I'm not making any comment on section 1 of the amendment, but that is correct that we already have an established process for calculating benefit to cost ratio. That's just one criteria. Then checking these other boxes about reducing greenhouse gas emissions is another criteria, and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Dudera.
Thank you very much. Hi, Mr. Stoddard. Thank you for being here today. So I know you are limiting your comments to that one second section, but if you could comment, I'm interested in your opinion of the amendment as a whole. You deal with supermarkets, you deal with industries that this would affect. I mean, do you think that this would be useful? Is this a good tool in the toolbox?
I apologize, Representative. I really didn't concentrate on section 1, so I'm reluctant to comment on it. I did hear comments from the other folks who seemed comfortable with it, who are knowledgeable about, that regulatory side of the House. But I think I'm going to decline respectfully to comment on that part of it because I just didn't look at it carefully.
I have a question for you that you may or may not have the answer to now, or perhaps you could get us information for the work session. But does Efficiency Maine Trust and the Reggie Trust often offer financial support for technology that isn't federally licensed for safety standards?
I can't say that we never do that, but we commonly do include requirements of some form of standardization or having met some form of certification. So a lot of times we will require that it's UL listed. Sometimes we will require that it's part of EPA Energy Star standards. Normally though, we're trying to facilitate the marketplace. And we're trying not to be overly intrusive in that arrangement between the customer and the vendors. So we try to take as light a touch as we can. And I will note that refrigeration is a somewhat unusually, what we would call a custom process, not so much at the residential level. At the residential level, when you're thinking about heat pumps and the refrigerator that's in your kitchen, those are mass produced and they're highly standardized and they come sort of pre-packaged. But at the commercial and industrial level, the kinds of things that Mr. Lebrecht was talking about at grocery stores, those are very customized projects. They're custom built in many, if not most cases. And so I can see situations where you might depart from a particular federal standard. But all that said, it feels like there's so much good work that is happening at the federal level. We would commonly look there first to see if there is some baseline standard, just so that you would have some sense of quality assurance and reliability that the customer is getting. I'm not sure if that's responsive, but.
And I guess my other question is, would you, in your own rulemaking process at the agency, have the capacity to do something like provide supports for retrofitting and replacement of refrigeration products?
Oh, yeah, we don't need a rulemaking to do that. We offer programs that are include technical support and financial incentives for qualifying projects. And we've done commercial refrigeration projects in the past as a qualifying project through our commercial and industrial custom program. And so that's the channel I imagine we would continue to use. And it would not be hard for us to simply calculate what the differences are of the alternative types of refrigerants being considered and establish that there is a significant reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions associated with that change.
So I guess what I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm mishearing you, is that you can essentially already do what this amendment in part 2 lays out.
I believe
without
so,
putting
yes.
it in statute.
I believe so, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Michael Stoddard? All right, thanks for joining us this morning. I appreciate you making time.
Thank you.
Are there any other folks in the attendee space that are here to speak about the legislation at hand? I see one hand up, Carl Crichton. And I believe that this is our last speaker for this particular piece of legislation. If you're here to speak for LD 866, either for, against, or neither for nor against, if you could raise your hand, that would be great. Otherwise, I believe Carl Crichton will be our last person testifying this morning on this bill. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. You could go ahead and unmute yourself and turn your screen on and share your testimony.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had on already.
There you go.
Good morning, Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker, and the members of the Environmental and Natural Resources Committee. I'm speaking neither for or against this bill. As a inspector dealing with installations of sorts of this sort, I think the more opportunities we have to use newer technology is better. And I've heard some people talk about UL. If things are listed as UL and installed in accordance to their installation instructions, we're fine with that as an inspector. Also, we look at things that come from Intertech, which is another agency that does this stuff. I've served on the International Mechanical Committee for the International Code Council for 2 seasons there, 2021 code and 2024 code. I can tell you that as far as refrigerants, that game is changing daily, and manufacturers are in the process of making new products to meet the new upcoming environmental standards set up by the federal government. So I urge you to follow. I think it's a good idea to at least entertain and research this enough to probably pass it. But again, if you have any questions, I can answer those.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions from committee members for Carl Crichton? Am I saying your last name correctly?
Cretion.
Cretion, thank you.
Just like the Prime Minister.
All right, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate
Thank you.
you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. And with that, we'll go ahead and close our public hearing on LD 866, and we'll open up a public hearing on LD 259. And it has a working title of an act to improve solid waste management. And I will pass it over to Representative Tucker to introduce the amendment. It started out as a concept draft bill that we carried over just to help folks remember where we are with this.
Thank you very much. Senator Brenner and members of the ENR committee. My name is Ralph Tucker. I represent half of Brunswick. in the House of Representatives. It's my pleasure to introduce an amended version for LD 259. For those of you who have happened to check the amendment, you will find that it is a schedule of 13 categories of waste, and it assesses a fee for each of these categories of waste as they enter the landfill. This is a chart. And what it does is it increases the fee on municipal solid waste or municipal solid waste ash as it enters the landfill. It would change the fee from $1 to $5 per ton. That fee would go into the Waste Management Fund, which the DEP can explain and give you the statistics on. The money is used primarily for grants to towns and cities all across the state to encourage recycling, set up new sheds, set up new infrastructure. It also would strike the amount that's currently being paid as a management waste fee on construction and demolition debris, which we call CDD, and residue from CDD. Currently, every ton of CDD that goes to a landfill is assessed a $2 per ton fee. This bill would strike the 2 and instead assess a $10 fee. The construction and demolition fee also goes into the Waste Management Fund administered by the DEP. However, the statute requires that assessments for CDD are specifically reserved to pay back towns for landfill closure costs which have been placed on them by the state. In other words, many towns have closed down their landfills because of the new statutes that were imposed a couple of decades ago. And the state promised to pay a portion of those closure costs. Closing a landfill is a costly procedure. There are millions of dollars of unpaid closure costs, which the state owes to municipalities across the state. And those statistics are also available with the DEP. We have today 6 witnesses who intend to testify in favor and 6 who intend to testify against. In reviewing the testimony, it is really an excellent reflection of all the different arguments that I've heard back and forth on this issue. My problem is that I sympathize with everybody. This would be a model study if you were involved in studying the waste system in Maine or in any other state, comparing the 6 in favor and the 6 against will give you a good flavor of the Rubik's Cube, which is waste in Maine. With that, I would basically suggest that we hear from the experts and make up your mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Tucker. Any questions for Representative Tucker from the committee? All right, not seeing any. I'm going to bring. Thank you. I'm going to bring Paula Clark over from the DEP. Representative Tucker, while we're waiting, what snack would you have brought us that I could daydream about?
I'm not off the committee now, and the tradition, as I understand it, is that the obligation is only on those legislators who have left the legislature and come
okay.
back. So
Okay.
I don't think I owe you a apple pie or a gallon of chocolate.
All right.
Not
All
yet.
right.
Next year, perhaps.
Welcome, Paula Clark. Good morning.
Good morning. I need to apologize in advance. I have a very tenuous internet connection this morning, so if I'm in and out, it does come back, but so good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. I am Paula Clark of the Department of Environmental Protection, speaking this morning neither for nor against LD 259, as proposed to be amended by Representative Tucker as an act to increase waste handling fees imposed on the landfilling of municipal solid waste and construction and demolition debris. The amended bill proposes to increase the waste handling fees imposed by 38 MRS section 2203A on municipal solid waste and municipal solid waste ash from $1 to $5 per ton, and on construction and demolition debris and CDD processing residue from $2 to $10 per ton. I'd like to provide some information concerning how the statutory fees are administered and how those revenues are used by the department. The current statute establishes a schedule of per ton fees on various types of waste that are landfilled, referred to as waste handling fees in the statute, most of which are special wastes, such as sludge and ash, carrying a $5 per ton fee. Landfill operators submit payment of the fees quarterly, and revenues are deposited into the main solid waste management fund. That fund is a principal source of revenues supporting a wide range of state waste management related program activities, including, but certainly not limited to, the Solid Waste Diversion Grant Program. The fund is administered centrally by the Department of Administrative and Financial Services, and between FY 2017 and FY 2021 took in annual waste handling fee revenues, exclusive of the fee on CDD and residue, ranging from $1.6 to $2.3 million. I would point out that that fund also receives roughly $1.5 million annually in revenue from the $1 fee on the retail sale of tires and batteries that is established in statute. During the last session, the legislature passed PL 2021, Chapter 230, an act to reduce the landfilling of municipal solid waste, placing a $1 per ton fee on all MSW landfilled in Maine. Prior to that, the law imposed a $2 per ton surcharge on MSW landfilled, but also included an exception, the net result of which was that the vast majority of MSW landfilled in Maine was not subject to the fee. The department began assessing the $1 per ton MSW fee upon the effective date of the legislation in October 2021. In 2020, approximately 400,000 tons of MSW and 96,000 tons of MSW ash were landfilled in Maine. Increasing the fee on these wastes to $5 would result in annual revenues of approximately $2.5 million from MSW and MSW ash. The current statute also imposes a $2 per ton fee on the landfilling of construction demolition debris and residue from the processing of CDD. In accordance with 38 MRS Section 2201, that revenue may be expended only for the state cost share to municipalities under the Closure and Remediation Cost Sharing Program for solid waste landfills established in Section 1310F. Revenue from this waste stream is managed directly by the department, separate from other waste handling fees, and dedicated to cost share reimbursement. In 2021, approximately 615,000 tons of CDD and CDD residue was landfilled, yielding around $1.2 million in fee revenue. Based on 2020 data, increasing this fee to $10 per ton would result in total annual revenues of about $6 million. To date, the department has made municipal reimbursements totaling approximately $9.7 million. And I would point out that that $9.7 million was not exclusively from the waste handling fees or the Maine Solid Waste Management Fund. There were bond dollars available earlier in the program, and some of that reimbursement was through that bond money. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I will be available at the work session if you would like additional information on the Maine Solid Waste Management Fund or the programs it supports.
Thank you so much for joining us. Are there any questions for Paula Clark from the committee? All right. I think with that, we will move on to our next cast of folks. If you can raise your hand if you're here to testify in favor of the legislation over in the attendee space. Thanks again, Paula Clark. I'm just going to shift you back over to the attendee space. So once again, if you're here to speak in favor, if you can raise your hand. I'm bringing Kevin Roach over first, and then Peter Blair and Kat Taylor. Good morning and welcome. Good morning, Kevin Roach. We can see you and hear you. You can get started whenever you're ready.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about solid waste policy in the state of Maine. My name is Kevin Roach, and I've served as General Manager for EcoMaine for 17 years. I've also held leadership positions in the solid waste industry in Phoenix, Arizona, Binghamton, New York, and also owned and operated a recycling company in Rochester, New York. I believe my public and private sector experience can offer a balanced perspective to our industry. I come before you today to testify in favor of LD 259, an act to improve solid waste management and its proposed amendment. I assure you that this legislation will make a difference, and one that I'm really excited about. For those of you who are less familiar with us, EcoMaine is a quasi-municipal organization that manages solid waste materials from its 73 member communities in southern and central Maine. Our organization owns and operates a recycling facility, a food waste recovery program, a waste energy plant, and a landfill. But perhaps the one thing that makes us stand out from others is our outreach and educational programs that are second to none in New England and recognized nationally for our leadership in the solid waste management industry. EcoMaine closely aligns its policies and practices with the waste management hierarchy that is clearly defined in Maine state statute, as well as guidance on preferred methods of solid waste management recognized by the EPA. Some may argue that landfilling has been elevated to a higher rung of the waste hierarchy. Please don't believe this self-serving business interpretation. I'd be happy to explain further if there are questions at the end of my remarks. Last year, I testified on a similar bill on the 5 most, and I noted that there were the 5 most urgent issues in the solid waste management industry. I listened to your feedback, and today I've narrowed it down to just 2. The number one pressing issue before us today is that we have way too much valuable waste materials that are filling up our landfills. The amount of recyclables, food waste, yard waste, and other recoverable materials that are ending up in our landfills is alarming, and it's also disappointing. Now, that said, recyclables that we are recovering is encouraging. The 1 million tons that we're keeping out of the landfill today is very encouraging. But we've been there at that place for too long. There's still way too much stuff ending up in the trash. For example, the recycling industry has cycled once again, and it is alive and well at this date. But we still have way too many recyclable materials being stored in our landfills. And once they're in their landfill, we'll never be able to get them out. Small and large towns alike in Maine fall into three categories. Those that don't recycle at all, here in 2022, is amazing to me. Those that don't recycle enough, and those that can still recycle more. So nobody's doing a perfect job. There's a lot of room for improvement, and there's huge opportunity in Maine to get recyclables out of the waste stream. The second point that I'd like to make is more about what's coming tomorrow, and what the future looks like when it comes to solid waste management. Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are quickly running out of landfill space if they haven't already. They're calling us. Can you take our waste stream into the future? Southern New England is in crisis mode at this point. Just last year, 1 million tons of waste was shipped from Southern New England, most notably Massachusetts, to Ohio. Perhaps even worse for us is what's happening in New Hampshire. Half of the waste landfilled in the state of New Hampshire comes outside of their state borders, most notably, again, Massachusetts. How would you like to be in their shoes? Now add in the newest variable, $6 diesel, in Ohio becomes a bit more expensive, a bit more unsustainable. All that waste from Southern New England has to go somewhere, and perhaps New Hampshire will be first, but who's next? Again, next will be the place of least resistance. There's nothing that stops the waste from coming into Maine. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few years about PFAS, or forever chemicals. I want to remind everyone that landfilling, although necessary for some material, is just like PFAS, a forever proposition. You don't ever get rid of landfills. You have to go around them, and they will be with you forever. I want to also point out that in DEP's solid waste report in 2019, an excellent report that staff puts out, I can't wait, I wish they would do it every year. They're doing it every other year now. But they state on page 20, quote, "The cost of disposal seems to be too low to provide incentive for recycling," end quote. The report concludes on the last page, the last sentence, at this quote, "At this time, the solid waste disposal rates and fees are lower than the current rates for most types of recycling," end quote. We can't wait and see anymore. We can't continue to coast. We can't punt. We have to act now. We need good policy today to slow what's ending up in our landfills. The solution is LD 259. This will begin to send the message that Maine does not want to be the landfill state, particularly here in New England. Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and many other states have already taken action to discourage landfilling and fund the higher rungs of the hierarchy. Some of these states are charging $6 per ton or more. We're charging $1, and that just started. The average person generates about 1/2 to 1 ton of waste per year, depending on the size of depending on how much waste they have, which under this bill equates to about $2 to $3 per person per year, and maybe less if you can get them to recycle more. But even more important, much of that fee that we're talking about in this bill will be on the backs of out-of-state waste coming into Maine. The beauty of this legislation is that only Mainers will get it back. The funding to support the higher rungs of the hierarchy may be funded from out of state, but is only available to Maine communities. So really, they get their money back and then some. Last year, I concluded my remarks with my favorite advertisement, hoping that my point would stick with you, and that was Miller Lite's "Tastes great, less filling." For us in Maine, it's even easier than that because it doesn't have to taste great. It only has to be less filling. We in the industry desperately need your help to make Maine policy and practice less filling. Thank you for considering this legislation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much for that. Are there any questions for Kevin Roach? Yes, Senator Carney.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being here, Kevin Roach. I wanted to ask you, first of all, I love that less filling metaphor. And I'm wondering if you could comment to us on the use of, well, the situation with daily cover. And are there options to using waste as daily cover that will slow the taking up of landfill capacity?
Sure. My favorite alternative is the automated tarps. I use them in Binghamton, and I use them in Phoenix, Arizona. They worked a little bit better in Phoenix because you didn't have to deal with the snow. But in Binghamton, we had to deal with the snow, but it wasn't very much of an issue. We could work around the snow. With today's forecasting, when you're going to get, a foot of snow. And so, but the beauty of the automated tarps is they don't take up any space. And you can deploy them without any manual labor. They can be deployed with existing equipment that the landfill already has. You can attach the tarp deployment mechanism right to a DA dozer or something similar. And then the next day you just roll up the tarp and away you go. So I think there are alternatives. Some work better than others. Some work, sometimes you have to change up. But certainly we shouldn't be using a whole lot. And what happens when you have a lot of material, operators use way too much. We went and excavated landfill that was filled 25, 30 years ago. We couldn't believe the amount of dirt they were using. I mean, they just put dirt everywhere. And so when you have too much material, you utilize too much cover. So that's another problem. So there's always best practices, and SWANA, the Solid Waste Association in North America, has a class that really teaches landfill operators how to be frugal. And in Maine, we're frugal, to really deploy the best practices when it comes to landfill cover.
Thank you. Could I ask a follow-up question?
Of course.
With regard to the use of tarps, what effect does that have on the volume of leachate and the production of leachate in landfills? Does it reduce that?
It really has no, really, with daily cover, there's no win on leachate because daily cover is not going to shed the rainwater like it should. When you're talking about leachate generation, you're trying to keep the daily footprint as small as possible and have a longer term solution to shedding the stormwater. And that can be done as long as your footprint is very small. In my landfill manager's annual evaluation, one of the criteria is leachate generation and what he or she has done to minimize the amount of leachate being generated. But as far as the tarps go, these are a daily tarp, and really most other covers that are used for daily cover are not going to stop the leachate, because once it hits that waste material, it has to be recovered as leachate.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? All right, not seeing any. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
And we will move on to, let's see. Peter Blair is next. Then Robert Howe and Kat Taylor.
Can you hear me okay?
We sure can. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Brenner, Chair Tucker, and members of the Environmental and Natural Resources Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of LD 259. My name is Peter Blair. I am the Northern New England Zero Waste Staff Attorney for Conservation Law Foundation. CLF supports raising the waste handling fee for both municipal solid waste and construction and demolition debris. Increasing the cost associated with landfilling these materials will help create a financial incentive for recycling. Often the decision whether to throw something out or recycle it comes down to cost. This is especially true for construction and demolition debris. Materials like wood, concrete, and sheetrock are highly recyclable. However, these materials rarely have a second life because it's just cheaper to throw them out in a landfill. Increasing the handling fee will ultimately address this disparity in cost and put recycling on a more even playing field. Additionally, as Ms. Clark said, the money generated from the waste handling fees is critical to solid waste management in Maine. The money not only supports the department and its efforts for solid waste management, but also funds the Solid Waste Diversion Grant Program, which funds the development, implementation, and improvement of programs that increase solid waste diversion efforts through things like source reduction, recycling, and composting, the highest goals of Maine solid waste hierarchy. Currently, Maine's solid waste handling fee for municipal solid waste is significantly lower than other jurisdictions. West Virginia has a fee of $8.25 per ton. Pennsylvania has a $6.25 per ton fee. Vermont's is $6, and Ohio, which we just heard is accepting a lot of out-of-state waste still, is a $5 fee. Raising the handling fee from $1 to $5 this session will put Maine on par with these other jurisdictions. It will also ensure that the department has an adequate and consistent funding mechanism for its solid waste management needs. However, I would note that to make sure that the fee doesn't lag behind national and regional trends, CLF would recommend that the committee amend the language to require that the department continuously update the fee to match inflation. This could happen every 5 years at a minimum. This would guarantee that the fee remains strong enough to incentivize recycling and provides that steady funding mechanism for solid waste management needs in Maine. CLF also supports the decision to raise the handling fee for construction and demolition debris from $2 to $10. The fees on construction and demolition debris are earmarked for that remediation cost sharing program, which is critical to how we deal with closing landfills in Maine. Landfills are a permanent fixture. Kevin Roach explained this very well. The waste buried at these facilities will remain there forever, and this makes closing a landfill extremely complicated and extremely expensive. I think the current issues with the remediation of the Pine Tree landfill up in Hamden show exactly how important it is that we have a sufficient enough funding mechanism to support municipalities in their efforts to deal with these polluting facilities. That landfill is currently into 10 years of a 38-year remediation plan. And right now, 24 of the 28 monitoring wells remain above the corrective action criteria, showing that the remediation is not going well. It's not going in the direction we want to see. This is especially concerning given that recent testing of the leachate from that facility show that it is over 100 times the state's drinking water standard for PFAS. Increasing the handling fee for construction and demolition debris will make sure that we have a sufficient amount of money to deal with the closing of these landfills. I would also note that raising the handling fee this session is critically important given this committee's work on LD 1639, which would close the out-of-state waste loophole and result in thousands of tons of construction and demolition debris from out-of-state no longer being landfilled in Maine. While it's important and imperative that we do that, and CLF strongly supports that legislation, a natural consequence of that is you will have less money for those remediation efforts. You will have less money for that cost sharing program. Increasing the fee now will make sure that you alleviate that loss in revenue. And I would just note that while we are supporting this legislation, I think the interplay between LD 1639 and LD 259 shows that we really do need to begin considering independent funding mechanisms for solid waste management, diversion, and recycling. It's important that if we're actually going to really reduce the amount of waste we're generating, we can't rely on funds from landfilling. It just creates a perverse incentive where you're funding necessary programs through the thing you're trying to limit. So I would encourage the committee to think about other ways to create independent funding. But ultimately, CLF believes that this is an important measure, that LD 259 will help incentivize recycling and provide needed funding for the department's important solid waste management programs. Therefore, we are urging you to vote ought to pass on this legislation. Thank you for the opportunity to present this testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the committee this morning for Peter Blair? All right, not seeing any. Thanks for joining us. And next up is Robert Howe. Good morning, Robert Howe. Welcome. You can turn on your screen and unmute yourself and share your testimony with us this morning. Here you are.
Well, good morning. This process of getting beamed up is always very disconcerting to me. So I think I'm now with you. Senator Carney, Representative Tucker, members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Robert Howe. I am a resident of Representative Tucker's half of the town of Brunswick. And I'm speaking here today on behalf of Sierra Club Maine in support of the proposed amendment to LD 259. As you've heard, the two fees that are proposed for an increase we think are reasonable and serve a useful public purpose, namely to help fund the operation of recycling programs throughout the state and to compensate municipalities for the cost of closing landfills that were required to be closed by the state in that order with respect to the two fees. As you've heard, this business of remediation after closing a landfill is very time consuming and very expensive. And the state essentially owes municipalities a great deal of the money for costs they've already incurred, is my understanding. In addition to those two useful programs, the proposed increase in the construction demolition debris fee would complement the provisions of another bill, LD 1639, which received a solid bipartisan vote out of this committee. We understand the object of that bill, at least in part, is to reduce the quantities of CDD brought to Maine landfills from outside the state of Maine. The increased fee will serve as an incentive to identify more suitable disposal alternatives for those materials, hopefully in large part recycling, and help to achieve the timetable of getting to a 50% reduction in CDD going into landfills by 2026, which you included as part of LD 1639. So Sierra Club Maine urges that you support LD 259 with the proposed amendment. And I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. Fortunately, you've heard some experts. My expertise mostly is that I have to get my solid waste out beside the road by Tuesday morning. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Tuesday's my day too. Any questions for Robert Howe? All right, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And we'll bring Kat Taylor over next. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me attend this morning. I apparently had the old version of the LD 259 copy, and I don't have any of the testimony. I apologize. Some of the things that I wrote down have to do probably with the work session. So I sent an email to Marianne to see if I could attend the work session. I am for the bill to LD 259 to increase the funding for municipal solid waste and construction demolition debris. For those of you who may have seen me before, since 2014, I've been active in fighting MSW and CDD being imported in the state of Maine because I live in Argyle Township, which was targeted by the Municipal Review Committee for a landfill. And then we're like 5 miles from Juniper Ridge landfill. I see it every time I drive down the road, and Tuesday is my trash pickup too. So I'm wondering what's going on there. I'm kind of concerned that I listened to where all of you are from, and I was monitoring the last week's meeting about environmental justice. And a lot of the underrepresented people are me, and my communities. We're north of Bangor, we're an unorganized township, we're vulnerable, we're an aging population, we're low income, we tick all the boxes when it comes to a prime location for landfills. And Casella has been a running joke around here because Mr. Roche, who is now my new hero, brought up all of the problems we see with waste management systems here in Maine because it's simply too profitable. So yes, I think we should raise the costs of disposal
And I don't think it really goes far enough, actually, because I see a lot of funding going toward recycling. Recycling is the third, item on our waste hierarchy in this state. I would like to see more funding go toward salvage and repurposing. We used to have what was called, for those of you who are old enough, the Seagull Club, which was basically dump pickers who would go to the local landfill and people would throw things that were too good to really throw away, and they would recycle them, and they would repurpose them. They would incorporate them into whatever it is they wanted to do. So again, I don't have really a lot to testify to because I wasn't quite clear about what this session was about. It seemed to be a concept draft, so I thought that maybe you were looking for input. I would like to attend the work session if I could. I don't know when that is. I don't have a link for it. If Marianne could send me that information or Daniel could send me that information, it would be great. The one thing we do need to address in this state is to halt the importation of MSW and CDD. One of the things that I've been concerned about that I haven't seen in any of the discussions recently is the potential for invasive species coming in MSW and CDD that hasn't been processed. We put more restrictions on firewood that people coming to vacation here have in the back of their truck than we do in the tons of MSW and CDD that go into Juniper Ridge landfill every year. So to me, this is a big glaring oops. In the firewood FAQs, they specifically exempted biomass, fuel for biomass boilers from the firewood processing, which basically is that anything coming into this state that has a potential to carry invasive species should be heated up to a temperature of, I believe, 170 degrees for 75 minutes. Which is basically what the federal guidelines are too, although they are a little lower. So I think this is a point of leverage that somebody could look into, because if we could get MSW and CDD designated as the same requirements as firewood would have coming into this state, then we could definitely increase the cost of doing business in Maine and stop having it. I think $2 is still way too low. $5 is still way too low. I would like to see everyone pay for a bag, of trash and to pick up things that actually can be recycled. If you look at Casella's recycling page that they have, I have a sticker and I can go to the Old Town Recycling. They're temporarily closed. They don't accept batteries. They don't accept anything that comes in food except for pizza boxes. They're very restrictive on what they allow. There's up here in the rural areas, there's very little opportunity for us to take our electronics and other things to some sort of facility that can handle them. So because there's so much money in this and because the profit margin is so high, we're not going to see incentive for people to clean and strip and recycle their materials unless it hits them in the pocketbook. And so we have to meet somewhere in the middle where the waste handling facilities like Eco Maine encourage people to recycle instead of like Casella, who discourage it. They make it impossible for you to actually, it's hard. No one around here recycles except me, I think, and I throw away a kitchen garbage bag a month to my Tuesday pickup. So it can be done. People aren't doing it. They laugh because they say the recycling goes right to the landfill, and they're right. We take it to the recycling center. The recycling center fills up the container. They take the container to Juniper Ridge. So we need more oversight. We need stiffer penalties for violators, and we definitely need to make it more expensive for anyone bringing in anything to be disposed of in Maine, such as Ireland, bringing in shredded plastic for burning at the PERC plant. We need to make that more expensive. Yeah, I know. Don't even go there. Yeah, I was sat in at the beach.
If you could wrap up your testimony, that would be.
I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I know. I actually made notes on things and was going to be really organized. But please, I would like to participate in the work session if I could. And thank you for letting me speak today. It's encouraging to hear so many people who are being so progressive in handling this situation. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. And you will receive from Marianne McMaster the link for the work session.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other folks in the attendee space here to speak in favor? Oh, wait a minute. I see Representative Dudera's hand up to ask a question.
Thank you very much. And I don't have a question, so I'll just make this really brief. I just wanted to thank Ms. Taylor for giving us a kind of a window into, other parts of the country, the state, and what the transfer stations are like. We don't have pickup here in Camden. So we bring our stuff to our transfer station. And it's just interesting to hear the way it is throughout the state. So thank you for being with us and giving us that little window into that.
Right. So folks that are here to speak in opposition, if you could raise your hand. Okay. Jim Mitchell, James Cody, Neil Goldberg. Morning and welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, members of the committee, Jim Mitchell on behalf of Waste Management, testifying in opposition to LD 259. Just a quick note before I get underway with my formal testimony. The committee is in possession of two versions of our written testimony. I hope you'll discard the first and refer only to the corrected copy, as I've made an erroneous assertion in the first. Waste Management operates the Crossroads landfill in Norridgewock. Crossroads helps meet the waste disposal needs of more than 150 Maine communities. These include the 115 MRC communities sending part of their MSW and CDD to Norridgewock, following the temporary closure of their facility, the Fiberite plant. In addition, we serve another 50 plus municipalities in central and western Maine. Landfill space, as you all know, is a precious resource. It should not be squandered. So we support the motivation of this legislation, encouraging even more reduction, reuse, recycling by imposing a financial penalty on landfilling. Under this bill, that penalty, in the form of a fee to the state, is not being doubled or tripled. It is being increased 5 times on both MSW, ASH, as well as on CDD. But like medicine, a penalty can cure or kill. Will a 5-fold increase in CDD and MSW fees encourage more recycling or more diversion? That's the central question for the committee. In addition, we all know Maine is a large state, a lot of geography. Incineration has been a critical part of reducing the mass of landfilled material, but not all Maine towns have cost-efficient access to incineration. Distance equals costs in 2 fundamental ways: economic costs, with, as Mr. Roach indicated, $5 and $6 diesel, and environmental costs. Because the next time you see a large roll-off truck hauling MSW, barreling down 95, bear in mind that truck likely burns a gallon of diesel every 5 miles. What part of Maine's economy contributes the most to greenhouse gases? Transportation. In fact, in the last report I saw, it's almost half of our greenhouse gases comes from transportation. Then there's another environmental dilemma: safe, environmentally secure disposal of sludge. This wet waste cannot be stabilized in a landfill without a bulking agent. One of the most commonly used agents, processed CDD. This material acts as a giant sponge, soaking up moisture, stabilizing material, sludge, from municipal sewage treatment facilities that are, in many respects, the backbone of Maine's clean water protection. That sludge must be landfilled safely, securely, and that requires cost-efficient bulking agents like CDD. To summarize, we are concerned about the magnitude of the increase. We are concerned that folks on the committee understand landfilling is really a necessity for many Maine towns. And we are concerned that the towns we serve are under stress. You know, in Maine, we ask a lot of municipal managers and they know how to squeeze a buck, but they're under real stress these days, and inflation is real, and $4 a gallon gas is real. So increasing substantially disposal costs at this moment for thousands and thousands of Mainers is a tough call. We hope and trust you will consider these concerns as you deliberate this legislation. Thank you very much. And Madam Chair, I'd be pleased to try to respond to any questions committee members may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from committee members this morning for Jim Mitchell? All right, not seeing any. Thanks for joining us. Next up, I'll bring over James Cody, and following James Cody will be Neil Goldberg and Mark Draper. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. My name is James Cody, and I'm here today. I'm employed by Bernstein Shore and here today on behalf of Resource Lewiston. I did just want to note that unfortunately I was unable to get written testimony submitted in time, but I will try to do that today. I recognize that that may not be part of the official record, but I will make a best effort to do that. Resource Lewiston is here today in respectful opposition to the legislation for reasons that we would echo much of what Mr. Mitchell just relayed to you all. We have three sort of primary points of opposition, which I thought I might just touch on briefly. The first being we are concerned that this increase, a multiple of 5 from the current fees, concerned or at least have questions about whether that is being prescribed based on actual need or if that increase is more general in nature and not necessarily prescribed to need. So we think it's important when we increase these fees for everyone across the board that the fees are prescribed to the needs that we actually have. Secondly, we believe that fee increases should complement long-term solid waste management and recycling goals. And in this case, we are concerned, as has been mentioned previously, that an increase of 5-fold from the current rates could become a disincentive eventually to recycling and other solid waste management goals. And lastly, we just wanted to note that, again, echoing what you've heard previously, especially right now with diesel costs the way they are, with inflation and construction market that is booming right now, and we hope to see that in the future, that these fee increases could hit some consumers especially hard. I'd like to note that we certainly understand and acknowledge that fees have to be adjusted from time to time, but we question today whether this specific increase at this point in time is the right one. Lastly, I just wanted, and Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker, I realize that there's some legislation here that conflates with one another, and so I'm going to try to stay distinct from other conversations. But I did just want to say that I think we're dancing around a potential solution to a problem by talking about fee increases and other mechanisms that don't really accomplish what we all say, and Resource believes this too, that if we want to deter waste from coming in from out of state, and if we want to create more capacity in the landfill, in the state's landfill and other landfills, frankly, that there is one way to do that that may be more consumer friendly for all Maine people and accomplish that goal. And that would be to require that more Maine construction and demolition debris get recycled and require that to the extent practicable, that material is recycled before it goes to a landfill. That would reduce cost impacts on consumers, Maine people. That would eliminate what we've heard earlier about waste being imported to the state of Maine, and it would create capacity at landfills throughout Maine. So we hope the committee will consider that. We continue to encourage that there be a long-term plan, and to the extent that I can answer questions or participate in conversations that are helpful to this cause, I'd be happy to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from committee members this morning? All right. Not seeing any. Appreciate your time, and we'll move on to Neil Goldberg.
Good morning. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. My name is Neil Goldberg, and I am providing testimony in opposition of LD 259 on behalf of MMA's 70-member Legislative Policy Committee. Let's take a quick moment to say that my trash collection day is also Tuesday. However, I'm curious to know that should this bill be enacted, will it change the procedure of my community with the way it handles waste? Certainly no, it will be an additional cost. Just want to know how the management practices would change, which is really the overarching point I'd like to make today, which is there aren't available options to municipalities to pivot today. So they will internalize this cost, which we have to determine if it's elastic or inelastic, how much will be passed on to the ratepayer or the taxpayer. I'm not optimistic that this bill will take the profit out of the waste industry. I just am worried about where that cost is passed on to. And as to if this is disincentivizing a behavior, there would have to be an available option to disincentivize it too. Earlier, it was mentioned that there are 3 types of communities in Maine. I would agree, however, my interpretation of those 3 types of communities are different. There are communities that have different or numerous waste management options available and can afford them. There are communities that have those options available and can't afford them. And then there are those that just don't have the numerous options available to them. And so unfortunately, LD 259 doesn't do much overnight to change what those options are. For most communities, landfilling is their only choice. It does appear on paper that many communities are recycling in full entirely. However, some of the numbers of communities that are signed on with MRC or with EcoMaine may not be recycling 100% of their material. And so we do need to quantify if a community was to suddenly have the option to recycle more or compost more, could they afford to do it? And does this bill help with that at all? And so before concluding, I would just like to say that waste management is very expensive. In my testimony, I do a quick breakdown of revenues generated from these services compared to just the costs for collection, disposal, and recycling. And you'll see that the taxpayers, the property taxpayers, are paying a majority of this cost. And it's because we truly can't pass the full cost of recycling on to the taxpayer. Otherwise, we have to concern ourselves with illegal dumping or just avoidance of these fees. And so municipalities internalize them, and we will continue to do it. This is an essential needed service. And so no matter what the fees are, we will continue to provide the service. Just this bill may not change the behaviors quickly enough. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or address any other parts of my testimony. But thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goldberg. Are there any questions for Neil Goldberg? Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I wished I'd asked this question of everybody, both for and against. What would be your opinion on a thought on just imposing a fee on out-of-state waste only? We're concerned about waste coming in from out of state. Why not just put a fee only on that type of waste?
Certainly thought about that. I can't speak to the constitutionality of imposing that fee. Clearly that hits to the objective that we're all trying to achieve, or one of the objectives here. It also might be worth differentiating truly between MSW and CDD. And so if we're trying to avoid being the dumpster of New England, let's really zero in on the types of trash that are coming into our communities and disincentivizing that. So a great idea.
Are there any additional questions for Neil Goldberg? All right, thanks for joining us. Mark Draper is next, and then Matthew Marks.
Good morning.
Good morning, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Committee on the Environment and Natural Resources. My name is Mark Draper. I'm the Solid Waste Director for Aroostook Waste Solutions, and I appreciate the opportunity today to speak in opposition to LD 259. And I really want to note that Representative Tucker's description of the solid waste management system in Maine as being a Rubik's Cube is right on, spot on. And I think I'm going to start using that when talking about these issues. By way of introduction, Aroostook Waste Solutions is a not-for-profit corporation. We are owned by 4 municipalities in Aroostook County. Those are Caribou, Fort Fairfield, Limestone, and Presque Isle. And we own and operate 2 small municipal landfills in Aroostook County, providing for the disposal needs of approximately 42 communities, representing about 73% of the county's population. And we also operate a regional recycling program serving about 20 communities in central Aroostook County. So first thing I kind of wanted to note a little bit is we've heard this concern, this ominous concern that, you know, all of southern New England's waste is going to come to Maine. And I can't speak to whether that's true or not, but I can speak to the fact that that's probably not going to be coming to Aroostook County. Our mission is to serve, and our stated written mission is to serve our local communities in Aroostook County. We have no intention of importing waste from Massachusetts, and even if we wanted to, I'm pretty sure we couldn't be competitive enough to incentivize that. So that's not going to happen with our organization. So as we see this bill, similar to other fee bills, the bill unduly punishes communities like ours that just have no choice but to landfill solid waste. We're just not able to take advantage of a waste energy incinerator or some sort of conversion technology because of our location, our geographic location. We're simply just too far away. We need to use landfills to manage the waste that's being generated by the residents and businesses of our communities. And in fact, you know, some of the concerns we have with this particular bill, and particularly I think around the demolition debris portion of it, is, you know, if we get to a point where fees that we're obviously going to need to pass on to generators and municipalities, when those fees get to a point where, you know, it may not tip a generator into making a decision that's going to lead to recycling or improved management, it might be the alternative, the opposite of that, which would be, hey, I'm going to put this stuff on the back 40 because I don't want to pay to get rid of it. Again, that's probably not going to happen as often in a place like Cumberland County, but certainly in Aroostook County, where we have a lot of land and not that many people. Those type of things can and do happen, and that's a concern for us. In our estimation, implementation of these fees will do just one thing, and that's increase the cost of disposal by more than $200,000 per year for the communities that we're providing service to. That's $200,000 that will no longer be available for schools and roads, public recreation, ambulance services, or property tax relief in our mostly small rural towns. This is on top of the very recent implementation of the $1 per ton fee on the disposal of MSW at our landfills, a $10 per ton fee on sludge disposal, and the various disposal licensing and annual reporting fees that we already pay to the state by our organization. So some quick math, if these fees are approved and implemented as proposed, our small little organization will be paying an estimated $333,800 a year in state fees. And it hasn't been mentioned, but there is another bill being considered by a different committee, that's LD 1694, an act to create the Maine Redevelopment Land Bank Authority. is being considered by the Committee for Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business. And that bill seeks to assess a $3 per ton fee on the disposal of demolition debris to fund a program for municipalities to use for repurposing and remediating blighted properties in their communities. So if both of these bills pass, the fee assessed for the disposal of CDD will increase from the current $2 per ton to $13 per ton. So as others have mentioned, considering recent dramatic price increases in fuel and electricity and nearly all consumer products and services as a result of the inflation that we're dealing with, just doesn't seem like the right time perhaps to be implementing additional fees that, you know, these communities are going to have to pay. I want to touch a little bit on
Mr. Draper.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, so we try to keep testimony to 3 minutes. So if you could find your.
I'm going to wrap up. Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, you know, the grants for recycling and other improved waste management programs. Very much appreciated. I would note that unless we are receiving a grant of $135,000 a year, this is a net cost for our organization because, you know, that's essentially the cost of that additional $4 per ton. I would prefer that we keep that $135,000 and make decisions that are more appropriate for the local communities that we're servicing. And with that, I'm going to close my testimony and answer any questions that you folks may have. Thank you for your time.
Representative Ziegler has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Draper, for being here this morning. We've seen you before in front of ENR. Just a quick question.
Sure.
Is there any transfer of solid waste across the Canadian border? You mentioned the southern border.
Yeah, I don't know if you're talking about importation or exportation. There is no importation across the northern border of waste into Aroostook County, but we do see the opposite. Several communities in the St. John Valley utilize a landfill in New Brunswick for disposal of their solid waste. So when I say we're servicing 73% of the county's population, essentially all of the county's population, except for what gets exported to Canada.
And if I may, do you know what fee they pay on that tonnage going into Canada?
I don't know the current fee. No, I wouldn't feel comfortable quoting that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions for Mark Draper? All right, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for your time.
Next up is Matthew Marks.
Hey, thank you, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, distinguished members of the committee. My name is Matt Marks. I reside in the town of Scarborough, and I'm a lifelong resident of Maine. I'm testifying on behalf of the Associated General Contractors today. I think Mr. Draper actually hit the nail on the head, and I'll try to just briefly give back a good deal of my time because I've included written testimony about the data I wanted to present anyway. But it's really today a question of inflation. We saw supply chain and inflation issues start right at the beginning of the pandemic. About 2 months in, we started to monitor inflation costs, and we've done that monthly. I've included some of the data inside my testimony, but some of the things that really jump out, and I can tell you this has been unprecedented. My 14 years at AGC and my time before in construction, I don't recall it being this drastic. We have soaring by 24% between June 2020 and June 2021. Materials and services were just through the roof. And some of the individualized products have even been much more than that. I've heard, for example, spray foam be as high as over 50% cost increases, some of them happening monthly now. Also, the increase in fuel, I know it was mentioned a couple times, but we're really at an 8-year high. We have an increase of 41% from a year earlier. The reason that I bring that up, and I actually illustrated some of the material cost increases so you can look at those individual by product, is that this is having a pretty significant impact on both residential housing. Certainly if you live in any part of the southern parts of the state, you've seen dramatic jumps, but we're seeing that in rural parts as well and on commercial property. I understand the intent here What I might suggest to you is that if there is an increase that will happen out of this bill, that it'd be more gradual over time rather than such a quick jump from $2 to $10 a ton. State agencies have also asked me about what the inputs are that are causing some of these increases, such as DOT. They saw about a 40% increase in their projects over the last few years. That's quite significant. And I get concerned about what's going to happen with the use of both our state dollars and also private investment as this continues. So, but with that, I think most of what I wanted to bring to you today was covered by the folks who spoke before me. They certainly support the idea of investing in our landfills and tackling those projects. But I would just say that that increase is a pretty significant added cost to what we're doing today. The only other thing I'd add is on recycling. Substantial gains have been made on recycling, both on-site with projects. As you would probably guess, most contractors are pretty frugal. I'd say Representative Boyle has probably dealt with quite a few of them, from recycling, brick products to actually taking crushing operations on-site to use as much material as we can over again. Both Maine DOT and BGS has been gracious about even experimenting with some of those projects in the past. So with that, I yield back the time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Matt Marks. And what's your trash day?
My trash day is on Thursday. We probably share that, don't we? I think
on Tuesday.
Oh, you're Tuesday. All right. You beat me on that.
Yeah. Any more questions for Matt Marks this morning? All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Next up is TJ Troiano and then Shelby Wright.
Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. Thanks for having me here today. My name's TJ Troiano, and I represent Troiano Waste Services. We are a collection and transportation company based in Southern Maine, servicing Southern and Central Maine. Most of one of the great parts of going near the end, most of what I have to say or points have been brought up, so I'll be quick here. But I just want to emphasize on a few and add one. The fee on MSW that you're proposing today is going to create an unfair playing field. The waste to energy facilities in Maine are already at capacity, so there's days that we have to go to the landfill. It's not by choice. Troiano Waste has always preferred to go to waste to energy facilities. But now how do I charge my customers not knowing what day I can go to the landfill, what day I have to go to the landfill, and what day there's enough room at the waste to energy facility? So you're going to create an unfair playing field for some of the commercial customers and residential customers out there. Another point after the capacity issues is some of the towns are much more than 100 miles away from a waste to energy facility. Is it better for the state to run those 100 miles trucking, or is it better to get to a closer disposal site until we can have more capacity in rural areas for waste to energy? The next few points are going to go towards the MSW fee and the CDD fee. Some of the recycling facilities in Maine are already at capacity, so it's hard to bring some of the material there. We're on bypass going into the landfills. The increased fuel costs as of late to go to the landfills is already going to hurt Maine communities. Increased labor costs, increased inflation. This is all going to somehow end up back in the Mainers, pockets. Well, I know we heard earlier that it only costs, a Maine member $2 or $3 a year if these charges happen, but that's from their house only. The grocery stores are going to pay more, which means the price of milk goes up, the price of bread goes up. This ultimately turns into a tax back to all the Maine residents. I also wanted to point out that disposal costs in New England are already extremely higher than most of the country. We do charge a lot, and that's why Ohio might be appetizing to Massachusetts, but even with our current price, Ohio's probably still appetizing. I want to thank everybody for your time today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Any questions from committee members for TJ Troiano this morning? All right, not seeing any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Shelby Wright. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the ENR committee. My name is Shelby Wright. I am the regional manager of engagement for Casella Waste Systems, and I'm here to speak in opposition of LD 259. You've heard a lot of compelling arguments on the opposition this morning, from increased fees on municipalities with already stretched municipal budgets for waste disposal, high gas prices, transportation costs from our friends in the construction industry. And we've also heard about the fact from MMA that this bill actually does nothing to change waste management practices, just increasing the fees. And so, as usual, per my scope, I am a problem solver and not a fault finder. And so I would like to introduce a proposal to the committee based on the overarching purpose of this legislation. The purpose, of course, of this legislation is to preserve landfill space and to encourage more recycling. However, there's not really a pathway in the legislation to do that. And so what I suggest and what I would recommend is an amendment that actually separates the lines out from the raw materials, and from the processed materials. 1639 works really diligently to try to keep out-of-state waste out and also promote more landfill space for in-state. And I've testified before this committee that we also have about 400,000 tons of unprocessed construction and demolition debris that goes to landfills across the state every day. We have not created a pathway or an incentive to promote infrastructure development or to incentivize the recycling of said materials. And so my proposal, my idea, is to separate out the raw construction and demolition debris fee structure from the processed construction and demolition debris fee structure, thereby better incentivizing the recycling of the material. Equating them, to me, disincentivizes any processing. We've heard, in rural areas, this might lead to having more, construction demolition debris on your buddy's woodlot. We also know that landfills across the state rely on the process of construction demolition debris for bulking agents for sludges. With 1911 on the horizon, this is going to be a necessary resource to have more in-state generated construction and demolition debris recycled to provide much needed materials for landfills, would help alleviate a lot of the out-of-state waste necessities that the committee has talked about all year. We can use Maine waste to solve Maine problems and preserve those resources and find higher and better uses for them, thus maintaining a strict adherence to Maine's solid waste hierarchy. And then all the metal and the wood can be collected and put to a higher and better purpose. So that is my proposal to the committee for an amendment to this legislation. And I thank you very much for your opportunity to testify in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions from committee members for Shelby Wright? All right, not seeing any. Oh, wait a minute. Representative Dudera.
Thank you very much. I was just checking quickly to see, Ms. Wright, whether this new proposal that you have just floated was in your testimony, and I don't see it. Your testimony.
It was in my testimony. I said a more progressive approach would be to separate the fee structure to encourage more processing of materials to limit volumes sent to a landfill. So by equating raw material with processed material, it doesn't incentivize recycling, as if the fee structure equates it. So if you separated them out, it may provide more of an incentive to recycle and process more, not only MSW, but also construction demolition debris, which I know has been a goal and a conversation held by this committee throughout the session.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean. I see your sentence now. You didn't flesh it out, but you gave us the idea. So, okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions from committee members? All right. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. You have a great day.
Next up is Michael Carroll and then Tim Curtis.
Thank you. Chairman Brenner, Chairman Tucker, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Michael Carroll. I'm the Executive Director of the Municipal Review Committee, the special purpose nonprofit established to represent the interest of 115 communities that depend on the MRC to manage the complex and the vital task of collection and processing their municipal solid waste. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in opposition of LD 259. The Hamden Solid Waste Processing Facility, formerly known as Coastal Resources, will have a new owner on or before June 30th of this year. It will resume processing members' municipal solid waste soon thereafter. The slow path to ownership transfer is slowly due to the reluctance of the bondholders who hold sole ownership and interest of the facility. The MRC owns the property that the building sits on. It is possible through the ongoing receivership process that the MRC may become the owner of the Hamden facility. Whatever the outcome of the receivership process, a transfer of the plant's ownership will take place before June 30th of this year. During the 6-month period the plant operated successfully, it obtained a waste to marketable product well in the excess of the state of Maine's recycling target of 50%. When the plant is back in operation, the plant will produce recycled metals, glass, plastic, briquettes, commercial gas, and pulp. The MRC opposes LD 259 for the following reasons. During the plant closure, the MRC has been disposing of its MSW under bypass arrangements with Waste Management at the Crossroads landfill in Norridgewock and with PERC in Orrington. About 75% of its MSW is going to PERC and 25% is going to the landfill. The bypass will cease, of course, when the plant is back in operation. Based upon the operating experience prior to the closure, we know that 20 to 25% of residual MSW will be sent to landfill after the plant in Hamden reopens. 75% to 80% will be sold as a recycled product. LD 259's fee increase will represent a significant cost to the MRC's community members who, when the plant is back and operating, will be recycling a greater percentage of their MSW than non-member communities. In effect, LD 259 will impose a burden on the MRC communities because when the plant in Hamden reopens, MRC communities will have far more effective recycling than other towns in the state of Maine. The purpose-free structure is misguided and will not accomplish its purpose regarding the MRC and its members. It will impose on the residuals landfill from the MRC tonnages of MSW that in fact a levy of between $500,000 and $700,000 per year to the MRC. This will unsuccessfully add the MRC's cost of doing business and ultimately put pressure on a competitive advantage of recycling products. We would think that the last thing a strong recycling program would want to do. The goal of recycling must be for Maine to put all its efforts in programs for recycling. Maine should not adopt bills that increase costs that MRC operations by imposing a levy or reflecting small amounts of landfill residuals that affect the MSW processing of its operations. The MRC has no quarrel with the goals of LD 259.
Mr. Carroll, we try to keep testimony to 3 minutes. Could you find your closer, please? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's all I had to say.
Well, you can close. You can close.
We have no quarrels with the bill. We just feel that the focus should be in recycling efforts and put more towards the recycling efforts rather than fees on the MSW.
Are there any questions for Michael Carroll from the committee? Yes, Representative Ziegler.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Carroll, for being here. So when the plant and the Hampton plant is up and running, you're going to be sending, the MRC towns are going to be sending less to landfills, so they won't be paying those fees. So how will that, I'm a little confused on the section.
So we will still have the residuals coming from the plant, and those residuals will be entitled to that $5 fee because those residuals do go to the Crossroad landfill.
And if I may, so the residuals though will be less because you've sent them through the plant, correct? And you've taken out everything. So you're actually sending less to the landfill?
Yes,
So
so the residuals should be about 20 to 30% of everything the plant takes in.
So then the towns that send their waste to the plant are actually sending less to the landfills, and then hence they'll be paying less in fees. Is that correct?
Yes, they'll still be paying the tip. The fee is designed as a pass-through.
Yeah.
So the plant will be responsible for that fee, which would probably have to increase the tipping fees at that time.
Okay, so, well, I guess I have some further questions on how we can make it not onerous for the plant. If you're paying tipping fees and fees on material that's not going to a landfill, if that's what you're saying.
So, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So, okay, solid waste comes into your plant, correct?
Yes,
And they're paying tipping fees coming into your plant.
yes,
And is the tipping fee, is the fee then tacked on to that truck coming in, but it's not necessarily going to a landfill, correct?
correct. So maybe it will help. The plant will experience, and this fee would add an additional $500,000 to $700,000 in operating costs of the plant. By
Because-
adding fee to the residual.
Because of the residuals going.
Yes,
Okay, but you're actually reducing the costs by sending it through and recycling most of the waste, correct?
yes. If the waste was not in bypass and all going to the plant, the cost would be reduced.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. That explains.
Any additional questions from the committee for Michael Carroll? I just want to wish you good luck getting everything restarted.
Thank you. Thank you.
For your efforts there. All right, and with that, we'll move on to Tim Curtis. Welcome, Tim Curtis.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Tim Curtis. I am the town manager for the town of Madison. I am the chair of the board of directors for Kennebec Valley Council of Governments, and I'm a member of the MMA Legislative Policy Committee. I'd like just to speak to some things going on in Madison that might help you get a better scope of the fight to help our landfill overfilling. Madison is home to former Madison Paper, which has been purchased by Go Labs, which is developing a wood fiber-based insulation product. They are scheduled to start production at the end of this year. Chimbro is on site doing a lot of good work to get that facility ready. They will produce a product that will compete directly with styrofoam. Styrofoam does not landfill, does not decompose, but this product made out of timber from Maine woods will. On site is also the Anson-Madison Sanitary District, which was built with a huge amount of capacity to handle the off-flow of Madison paper. They now truck in waste from all over New England to process it at this facility. They are receiving funding from the Department of Agriculture and from other sources to build a PFAS treatment system on the end of their process, which will be the first one in Maine, to capture the PFAS and continually treat them in a loop through the leachate process. And finally, both Go Lab and the Sanitary District are looking to build an anaerobic digester, which will handle a lot of the organic waste that is currently being landfilled, and it will turn it into energy on site. It will make the Go Lab facility a completely carbon neutral facility once it's online. And I just want to let you know that there are lots of things going on in rural Maine to try to help be part of this Rubik's Cube solution to the problem. I'm testifying in opposition to this bill because I don't really believe that the increase in fees is going to have the intended result of encouraging people, especially in rural parts of the state that don't have recycling options. In conclusion, I will say that diverting materials away from transfer stations and disposing them improperly and illegally is real. It really happens. We really deal with it in our municipalities. And I'm concerned that raising the fees will only make that worse. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Tim Curtis from committee members? All right, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us this this morning. It's still the morning. Thank you for joining us. And next up is Carl Cretion. Carl Cretion's hand is the last one up for those here to speak in opposition. So if you're here to speak neither for nor against, if you could raise your hand and you all will come in next.
Good morning. Again, I'm speaking in opposition to this bill. Representative Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker and in the committee. The fact that as a builder, we do our best to recycle everything we can. We spend a lot of time picking up materials that can be recycled or reduce the impact of waste facilities. The cost, it adds significantly to the bottom line for affordable housing, and we ask that you, as presented by other opponents, look at different avenues such as expanding or incentivizing recycling. I think it's important we do that. The fact that we don't use a lot of plastics if we can help it. Send all our roofing materials to a facilitator who can use them in hot top. Cardboard goes to recycling. We do everything we can, wherever we can. And we do recycling on Wednesdays, and it counts to be 4 times the amount of trash we put out there every week. So we're a firm believer of sustainability and reducing the impact on the environment. And I submitted some written testimony to you, and that's what I have. All right. Any questions?
Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning again, Mr. Cretion. I'm looking at your testimony and it's on your letterhead, but you're a member of Maine Association of Home Builders and the national chapter, if you will. Are you?
Yes.
Testifying on your own behalf or on behalf of those two organizations?
I am testifying on both. And I'm from Saco, Maine. Yep. Okay. I live in Saco, Maine. Yep. Most of our members do a lot of recycling. We have several dumpsters just because tipping fees are over $115 a ton right now. And they're going up with the cost of diesel.
Any additional questions for Carl Cretion this morning from committee members? All right, appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. So next up are folks that are here to speak neither for nor against. And the first person coming in is Kenneth Capron, and then Sarah Nichols. Good morning and welcome, Kenneth Capron. You're welcome to take yourself off mute and share your screen with us and offer your testimony whenever you're ready.
Son of a gun, I didn't know I was muted. So my name is Ken Capron. I'm from Portland, and I have been very interested in recycling and waste management for the past couple of years. I'm particularly listening to this testimony. Certainly, some sort of a fee structure is a temporary solution or approach to waste management. But the real problem here is that the landfill, no matter how much you charge people to put stuff in landfills are not the ultimate solution. Landfills are an archaic solution to a problem that we haven't found a solution to yet, and that is recycling. And I would like to see rather than charging extra fees or trying to find more places to dump stuff, we should be putting our money into research that actually takes all the stuff that we would put in the landfill and sorts it out chemically or electronically, however it's done, into a reusable product. Everything we put in landfill is eventually going to come back and bite us, whether it's 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now. That stuff isn't going away just by putting it in the ground. So it's always going to be there. And you aren't going to charge fees to a company for hundreds of years just to deter or distract people from putting stuff in landfill. So our real solution is to find a recycling process and or hire the scientists or enable a business to come to Maine that would develop a recycling process from start to finish down to the very last drop of gold or lead, whichever it is. But that would be the reason I'm neither for nor against, is I think we're taking the wrong approach. I think we desperately need to start thinking about the long-term impact of solid waste. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Are there any questions for from the committee this morning? All right, not seeing any. Thanks for joining us. Next up is Sarah Nichols. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Sarah Nichols, and I'm the Sustainable Maine Director for the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and I appreciate this opportunity to testify neither for nor against LD 259. This bill rightfully targets the root causes of our waste crisis, which are the economics of who pays for it and how much. The primary reason why we have too much waste, too much landfilling, and not enough recycling is because the price signals support that outcome. In my opinion, these are the three primary ways that the economics of waste are working against us. The first is cost externalization. This is when the costs of waste management are unfairly put on the backs of taxpayers and future generations, and not on the producers of waste. This leads to a lot of waste destined for landfill because there's no incentive to make less or more recyclable waste in the first place. And this is why NRCM strongly supports extended producer responsibility laws. The second is that landfilling is too cheap. The waste problem created by cost externalization is then compounded because the least expensive way to manage waste is often to dispose of it in a landfill or incinerator. Our towns are faced with tough decisions to either raise taxes or to support their recycling programs or pay less to dispose of it in a landfill or incinerator. And the third is that corporations that profit from landfilling. There are companies that earn huge profits from landfill disposal. The higher the volume, the higher the profits. These companies have deep pockets and they hire lobbyists to fight against good public policies aimed at reducing waste and landfilling in our state. So with that said, NRCM generally supports policies that increase the cost of landfilling relative to waste reduction, reuse, and recycling, which this bill would do. However, we are testifying neither for nor against this legislation because we're not certain that raising disposal fees on municipal solid waste is the right approach at this time, and we are concerned about the perverse incentives created by the construction demolition debris disposal fee. The disposal fees at MSW are currently $1 and are proposed to go up to $5. These fees support the state's very successful solid waste diversion grant program, which has helped to reduce waste in the state. But those fees are generally paid by municipal taxpayers, and we do not believe that now is a good time to raise costs for the towns. However, we would support an increase in this fee when Maine's new EPR for packaging program is implemented. At that time, Maine's municipalities will be reimbursed for the cost of managing packaging by the producers of the waste, and there'll be more opportunities to avoid paying the disposal fees because there will be more ways to reduce, reuse, and recycle. We applaud the committee for passing that transformative policy and look forward to seeing it in action. So now to the CDD fees. So they're proposed to go from $2 to $10 a ton. These funds are currently earmarked to reimburse municipalities for the costs of landfill closures, which are slow going and desperately needed. This one is tricky because we are intent on reducing CDD waste going to Maine's landfills. And if that happens, then this fee will likely need to be increased to make up for lost revenue. But this bill draws attention to the perverse incentives created by disposal fees. We have set up a system where we rely on a steady stream of funds for things we want to do, namely reimburse towns for landfill closure costs in this case, from something that we're trying to stop doing, which is landfilling CDD. So we joined Peter Blair in suggesting that the committee explore alternative sources of funding to support reimbursement for towns for the cost of landfill closures. But in the meantime, we wouldn't be opposed to an increase in CDD fees to make up for any lost revenue should CD disposal be significantly reduced in the near future. And I'd be happy to talk more about that. Thank you very much for your time and consideration of these comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Sarah Nichols. Are there any questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. I like how you sort of summarized primary ways of economic waste, the 1, 2, 3, externalization, et cetera. I think what aren't you kind of missing though the step before that, when a resident determines which bin they'll throw their waste into though? Because you don't have to, the town doesn't have to pay more per ton for solid waste, municipal solid waste that they bring to a landfill if they have less of it, because the resident themselves put less waste into the solid waste stream by the fact that it costs them less, more to do that and less to recycle. Isn't that an internal microeconomic decision that each of us makes? And that's isn't that part of what this legislation is trying to target? And the way that legislation does it is by sort of assuming that the municipality will take actions with their residents along these lines of that internal decision making that they make.
Thank you very much for your question, Representative Boyle. I studied economics in school, so I was delighted to kind of think more globally about, there's a more exhaustive list of the financial reasons why we have all of this waste. And I think that, to me, economics is just the study of how people make decisions. And I do think that happens at all levels, including at home. I'm very supportive of pay-as-you-throw programs where, residents are charged per bag of waste. So they have that incentive to make that right decision and put that material in the bin. But to me, it's a little bit of, I don't call it victim blaming, but I think a lot more people would be inclined to recycle if the material that they were receiving was recyclable, and not enough of that is happening right now. A lot of the stuff that they're getting is not recyclable or it's confusing. And then a lot of towns at the moment can't afford to offer recycling programs for every single type of material. Some towns can, some towns can't. That's what I was getting at with the new EPR for packaging legislation. That's going to make it more uniform and make it more widely available. So I think if we're going to financially penalize, taxpayers or people for doing the right, for disposal, that we need to provide a really easy way for them to recycle, which is making more recyclable material and offering a bin to everybody, I guess was my point. With that helps.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from committee members? All right, thank you for joining us. Oh, wait, Representative Boyle, back at it.
Actually, I do. One thing that, this is not a follow-up, it's a different question. We had early testimony, and I think there was some thinking that Maine's cost per ton is significantly less than Massachusetts and other states, and you have, pretty good background in this area. And I don't see where you address that in your testimony, because it seems to me that isn't that part of what we're trying to do with this fee increase, is to similar to the microeconomic decision that each of us makes to throw our trash, there's the macroeconomic decision making that states and municipal solid waste operators make at the state or regional level. And it just seems like if it's $1 in Maine and it's $6 in Mass, then that's a pretty easy decision. And I recognize that the fuel cost, but can you explain why you didn't talk about and what are your thoughts at the same time as to why that doesn't matter in terms of out of state, in state? Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Thanks again for the question. I had a tough time deciding whether or not to support or be neither for or against this legislation, because I do think that the fees should be as high or higher on these materials as our neighboring states and in other places. But my concerns were more about the exact amount, who's paying for it, and the timing, I guess, of it all. I wish that it were constitutional, which was federally legal, to charge more to out of state than it would be to in-state to disincentivize the material from coming in. But my understanding is that we can't basically discriminate against out of state waste and by charging more for that, unless, of course, that material is destined for a state-owned or publicly owned facility. Right now, we can't prevent commercial entities from selling waste to each other and burying it in commercial entities. We can, however, do that for state-owned facilities. And I think that it begs for just kind of a relook at how I mentioned, say, number 3, where corporations are profiting off of landfilling. Maybe landfilling should be more of a not-for-profit operation, so that there's no incentive there to maximize profits. You're there to incentivize, conserving the landfill space, doing the right thing with the landfill space. So, and I know that you're all talking about this with another piece of legislation, but with the state owning the Juniper Ridge landfill, we just have this situation where it's run by a commercial entity, and it's just it's a tricky situation that the state has put itself into there. Thank you.
Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Senator. This question I'm going to ask you, but it's kind of to everyone that's listening. Someone that imports alcohol into Maine has to they have to pay a tax or fee on it. The same with cigarettes. They can't bring cigarettes across the Maine border without paying a tax on it. So why can't you, and I'm hypothetically, why can't we charge a tax or fee on out-of-state waste coming across the border, just like you would a cigarette or an alcohol tax? Maybe you can find an answer for that for me.
Thank you for the question, Representative Hanley. I'm not super familiar with that tax structure on those particular materials. I don't know if it's because, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm afraid to answer something that I don't feel completely expert on the topic of. But
I knew that. I wasn't trying to trip you up. I'm just
yeah. I wish I
question
knew.
for everyone.
I bet Dan Tartikoff knows the answer.
Any additional questions for Sarah Nichols? All right, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us. And we have one more person on the phone who would like to testify that I missed in our first round of folks that are here to speak in support of the legislation. If you are here to speak about LD 259 and you're in the attendee space, if you could raise your hand, that would be great. Otherwise, this will be our last person this morning.
Unmuted.
Welcome and thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. My name is Ed Spencer and I live in Old Town. I'm here to testify in favor of LD 259, which would increase fees on the landfilling of MSW and CDD. This bill would add teeth to the state's waste hierarchy, which is a statutory mandate to use the landfilling of waste as a last option after all other methods have been pursued. Curbside waste, or MSW, is composed of about 1/3 organic materials by weight. Composting food scraps, either individually in backyard composters or collectively with garbage to garden or Exeter Agri-Energy, reduces that weight portion to a great extent. Removing and recycling or reusing paper and plastics is another option. We need better support to get more materials removed from the road to our dumps, which are filling too quickly. The other fee increase would be on construction and demolition debris. This material is banned from landfills in Massachusetts, and almost 250,000 tons of CDD flow into Maine's landfills each year. Most of it to Juniper Ridge landfill, which is only 1.75 miles from my house. This state-owned landfill was created almost entirely to keep out-of-state waste out of Maine and prevent Maine from becoming New England's dumping fee, and that has not worked out too well. A $10 per ton fee on CDD would restrict such importation practices. You have another bill, LD 1639, which would restrict importation of CDD waste. Opponents of that bill, Casella and Resource Lewiston, argue that the real problem is actual made in Maine CDD being landfill. LD 259 would give such practices a strong disincentive. In a way, we might view LD 259 as a corollary to LD 1639. It is unfortunate that these fees are required to fund the closure of unlined landfills and other important municipal functions. And I agree with Peter Blair's opinions on that it would be far better to have some real dedicated funding for these purposes. But I think why don't I wrap it up like that? If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, thanks again for the opportunity. I'm pleased to be on the same team with the other people speaking here, except for those opposed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed Spencer. Are there any questions from the committee for Ed Spencer? All right, not seeing any. We appreciate your time this morning. And with that, I don't see any other hands up for the purposes of speaking, offering public testimony for LD 259. So with that, I will close the public hearing on LD 259. And I think at this point, because the committee has been focused on so intently for 3 hours now, we're going to take a 30-minute break. And then when we come back, we'll have our report, and we will also have our language review for LD 1639. So we'll be back at 12:30. Thanks so much. All right, good afternoon, everyone. If you're back at your desks, if you wouldn't mind just turning your screens on so we can get a quorum. Great, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. So I would like to change our order around, Dan, if it's okay, and if we could do this 1639 language review first before the firefighting foam, if you are ready for that. Would that be a possibility?
Sure.
Do you need a second? Or you
Yeah,
all
just a quick second.
Okay.
So 1639, an act to protect the health and welfare of Maine communities and reduce harmful solid waste, was voted a couple weeks ago. Majority ought to pass as amended. Minority ought not to pass. There was not much in the way of substantive change made to Senator Carney's amendment that was distributed prior to the final work session where this was voted. We do not have a fiscal note at this time. I can answer questions anyone has about the majority report, the final amendment language, and I did send out another proposal on behalf of Representative Hanley. I noted in that email that I was just sharing the amendment that was developed by Resource Lewiston. It was not something I was involved with. And I believe James Cody is here and can speak to that more if you want.
Representative Tucker.
Thank you, Senator. I would like to move at this time that we reconsider our vote on LD 1639.
Would second that.
I'm muted. Do we have a show of hands for folks that are supportive of a reconsideration? Representative Hanley? Okay, great. Thanks. That's unanimous. And with that,
Madam Senator?
Yes.
Madam Senator, I would also at this time like to move LD 1639 ought to pass as amended by Senator Carney's amendment, which we just went through with language review as presented by the OPLA analyst a moment ago.
Is there a second? Representative Ziegler is a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, and with that, I believe we're ready for a vote.
Excuse me, Senator Brenner.
Yes.
Senator Brenner, yes. Senator Bennett. Senator Bennett, absent. Senator Carney.
Yes.
Senator Carney, yes. Representative Tucker.
Yes.
Representative Tucker, yes. Representative Boyle.
Yes.
Representative Boyle, yes. Representative Toole. Representative Toole, absent. Representative Bloom.
Yes.
Representative Bloom, yes. Representative Hanley.
No.
Representative Hanley, no. Representative O'Connor.
No.
Representative O'Connor, no. Representative Gramlich.
Yes.
Representative Gramlich, yes. Representative Dodera.
Yes.
Representative Dodera, yes. Representative Bell.
Yes.
Representative Bell, yes. Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
Representative Ziegler, yes. 9 members voting for the motion, 2 against, 2 absent. Representative Hanley and O'Connor, is your motion
Yes. My
not to
motion-
pass?
No, it'll be ought to pass as amended, and I have the language that Dan is aware of, and I'd like to submit that as a minority report.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Dan?
Representative Handley and O'Connor, can I have your permission to work with James Cody as necessary on that language?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
So just as a question for mechanics, Dan, does that mean this comes back for another language review? Or is it that the jacket with the amendment will be sent for us to sign electronically?
Well, this has been revoted, so the processing of the majority report that was the prior majority report will be quick. We'll have to process the minority report as well. So I'll probably bring back the same majority report language, but hopefully with a fiscal, as well as the new minority report for another review.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And with that, we're going to move into our briefing from the Department of Environmental Protection regarding AFFF firefighting foam as it relates to LD 1505 from last session. And I'm going to bring over, hold on, sorry. Just got to get to the right spot here to bring people over. And oh goodness, you know what? I also need host capability again, please.
I'm sorry, I'll take care of it right now.
That's okay. Carrie Malinowski Ferris will be coming over, Melanie Loisum, and Faith Staples. Commissioner Loisum, excuse me. Good afternoon and welcome. It's good to see you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Good to see you as well. Thank you for having us this morning. I'm Melanie Loisum, Commissioner of the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. Here to present to you today is Carrie Malinowski Ferris, as well as Faith Staples from the Maine Emergency Management Agency. And with that, I'll turn it over to Carrie.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. I'm Carrie and I manage the Safer Chemicals program at the Department of Environmental Protection. With me today is Commissioner Loisum and Faith Staples from the Maine Emergency Management Agency. And I'm here this morning to review the report on implementation of an act to restrict the use of PFAS in firefighting foam. A report was submitted to you last week, and that outlines a framework for the collection and disposal of aqueous film forming foam known as AFFF. Last year, the legislature passed LD 1505, which established a prohibition on the manufacture, sale, and distribution of a specific category of firefighting foam we refer to as AFFF, to which PFAS chemicals have been intentionally added, with certain exceptions. The law, codified in 38 MRSA section 424C, also prohibits the discharge of AFFF for testing and training purposes. The law's intent is to help prevent AFFF from being released into the environment, where its fluorinated chemicals may cause ground and surface water contamination, particularly when used for fire training exercises due to the frequency and volume of repeated releases in one area. For a little bit of background, AFFF does have some unique properties that allow an aqueous film to spread across liquid fuel fires, creating a stable barrier that quickly starves the fire of oxygen and adds thermal stability to prevent reignition. It's for that reason that that category of foam extinguishing agents plays a critical role in large capacity fuel storage areas, airports, military bases, and ships. However, due to the recent discovery of soil and water contamination from fluorinated chemicals used in AFFF, massive research and development initiatives have been underway in the search for an equally effective fluorine-free suppressing foam. After language changes to their governing policies, both the Department of Defense and the Federal Aviation Administration now permit the use of non-PFAS firefighting foam. And although both DoD and FAA have invested considerable resources into the research, development, and testing of fluorine-free foams known as F3 that could replace AFFF, none of the currently available F3 products meet their specific performance standards. Unlike DoD or FAA, municipal fire departments in Maine respond to varying types of fire incidents. And because the majority of their fire calls are not liquid fuel based, AFFF is rarely necessary for their fire response. For that reason, it is realistic to expect that there are commercially available F3 products which are capable of meeting the current needs of most of Maine's municipal fire services. However, it is important to note that there are not F3 products available for Maine businesses that may be required to meet DoD's fire suppression standard. 38 MRSA, Section 424C, subsection 4, provides an exemption from the AFFF sale and distribution prohibition for oil terminal facilities and airports, but prohibits the sale of AFFF for use in marine defense applications. Bath Iron Works has notified the department that their contract with DoD requires them to install AFFF in the construction of the DDG 51 class of ships, which means that since January 1 of this year, BIW has not been able to legally procure AFFF as required to fulfill their contract. And so it is for this reason that one of the department's recommendations includes an exemption for marine defense when such use is required by DoD. As directed by statute, the department worked in collaboration with the Maine Emergency Management Agency and other stakeholders to develop a framework for the collection and disposal of AFFF in cases where it has not been returned to the original manufacturer. Pursuant to the recall described in subsection 5, paragraph B. After exploring collection and disposal options, the department recommends that MEMA serve as the lead agency for the collection of AFFF from Maine's fire departments, working closely with the Maine Fire Chiefs Association in order to establish an efficient collection protocol and encourage fire department participation. MEMA will need to establish a contract with an environmental services vendor who could properly package, temporarily store, and transport collected AFFF for disposal in accordance with state and federal waste management laws. Based on limited data, we estimate that there could be upwards of 48,000 gallons of AFFF potentially available for collection. Collection, storage, and disposal of that volume of product from across the state is estimated to cost just over $2.3 million. Part of the coordination effort between MEMA and Maine's municipal fire departments will include establishing appropriate timing for the collection of waste AFFF. And that's so that a proper F3 replacement product is in place prior to the removal of this firefighting tool. Where F3 purchase costs exceed AFFF manufacturer reimbursement amounts, the state may need to consider subsidizing the remainder of that cost. Due to the variability in fire department needs and historical costs for AFFF, at this time, the department can't estimate how much funding for subsidies may be needed for that effort. We do recommend that AFFF collection events be scheduled in such a way that fire departments have adequate time to submit reimbursement requests to manufacturers, receive those payments, and purchase replacement products prior to the removal of their current foam product. In order to eliminate the existing inventory of AFFF availability for fire response in Maine, the department recommends that the legislature appropriate funding to MEMA for this effort so that they might establish a contract with an environmental service vendor to collect, transport, and dispose of waste AFFF. We estimate that one limited period position and up to $2.5 million may be needed for this purpose. And as mentioned previously, additional resources may be needed for a foam replacement subsidy program. Our report also provides 2 recommended revisions to the statute to address questions raised during implementation of the law. I think you have a draft of that, and that is to expand the exemption to include use for marine defense when such use is required by DoD. And the other is to require manufacturers of firefighting and fire suppressing foam sold or distributed in Maine to provide the department with a certificate of compliance, attesting that their product is compliant with the law and does not contain any intentionally added PFAS. I hope this summary has been helpful for you to understand how we can help Maine's fire departments make the change to fluorine-free firefighting foam, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are we also then hearing from Faith Staples as well? Or are they here just for question and answer?
I think Faith is here to answer any questions you might have or describe how they might move through implementation of a collection and disposal program. But she's here and she can go ahead and speak to any questions you have.
Wonderful, thank you. Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator, and I will take the opportunity to introduce myself since I was late this morning. I am Lori Gramlich, and I represent House District 13, which is the lovely seaside community of Old Orchard Beach. So, Carrie, thank you so much. I'm curious, you referenced disposal of AFFF, and it's my understanding that Congress has banned the Department of Defense from incinerating AFFF. Can you just help me understand how that's going to play out?
Well, Commissioner Loisem is here to walk us through some of the disposal options and did some reading on EPA's guidance. EPA certainly at this point has some interim guidance that they're finalizing in regard to PFAS in certain products, and AFFF is one of the categories that they speak to.
I appreciate that follow-up, if I may, Senator. Thank you. So I know that 1505 required the department to develop a framework for collection and safe storage, but I don't recall seeing that in the report back, and I don't remember hearing that. So can you just elaborate on the plans for how that's going to occur? Or maybe the commissioner can elaborate on that.
Sure, I can take that. One of the things that we grappled with in putting the report together was how to address some current uncertainties around guidance that will be coming from the federal government regarding management of these materials in the long run. There's interim guidance that EPA released at the end of 2020, and they identified that they're still doing more research, particularly around incineration of the materials. So for example, other states that have done collection programs have sent the materials either for landfilling or for incineration in order to dispose of them. As you heard earlier this morning, landfilling is an option that results in the materials being there forever, right? Incineration results in potentially some of the PFAS compounds being emitted. And at this time, EPA is not able to really effectively quantify how much is emitted by the facilities that are currently incinerating these materials. So to your question regarding safe storage, Representative, there is a section in the report that talks about long-term potential storage as an option. So we don't have any facilities in Maine that are currently equipped to engage in long-term bulk storage. We do already through the Maine Fire Chiefs Association and MEMA and DEP recommend safe storage on site at wherever existing fire departments have stocks. And we describe that in the report that materials should be stored in the location where if a barrel leaked, for example, it should not be in a closet that's got a drain, which are some of the places that these materials have been stored historically. They should, wherever they are stored, they should be stored in a location that offers potential secondary containment. And if the state wanted to pursue as an option some form of storage in order to consolidate the materials, take them from the fire departments, put them in a couple of locations where they're all consolidated until we have better information about landfilling or incineration, or until some other destruction option becomes available, there would be additional facility licensing that would be necessary in order to establish those kind of facilities. It's certainly an option, but it's just a different path that has different requirements associated with it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Representative Boyle.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I heard a number, it doesn't, you've estimated 48,000 gallons or so of this AFFF in storage. I understand it's an estimate, the best you can do. What I don't think I heard is, has there been any attempt to estimate how much is actually being applied out in the real world? You know, in other words, being spread either by in training exercises or in actual use to suppress fires? And if not, is there any, I guess the second part of the question is, has there been any communication with municipal fire departments as to discouraging its continued spread, either for actual use or for training?
Thank you for the question, Representative Boyle. MEMA has a section of their website dedicated to information about AFFF and describing best practices. And we certainly hope that there is zero training happening with AFFF product as it's prohibited by law. There are PFAS-free products that can be used for training purposes. At this time, there is a reporting requirement for anyone that discharges a AFFF product that contains intentionally added PFAS for any kind of fire incident. And I haven't been in touch with the response division to determine whether or not we have received any of those reports recently. And so Commissioner Loisem, I'm not sure if you have that information.
We would need to get you more specific details if you're interested, but I know I have heard of at least 2 instances when we were contacted by fire departments letting us know that they had used materials. I believe in one case, they believed that they were PFAS free and they were seeking our confirmation of that. And in another circumstance where we did some follow-up testing to determine whether or not there'd been any groundwater impacts, because we did believe that it was AFFF. Like I said, we'd be happy to get the committee some more specifics if you're interested, but we have received a couple of calls.
I don't know that we need, my question wasn't to really to get down to that level of detail, as more to see that the problem, to confirm that the problem has essentially been halted, if you will, for the most part. It sounds like it has.
Any additional questions from committee members? All right, thank you all so much for joining us. And committee, I'll remind you that Dan sent out a draft of what a committee bill would look like. Dan, do you want to touch on that at all?
You want me to go through it real quick?
Do you mind? That'd be great.
So just to note, I did send an advance version of this out to all of you, and I've made a slight change based on some feedback I got. This is the part of the law that was enacted last year as part of LD 1505, and this is the prohibition on firefighting foams, AFFF foams that have PFAS intentionally added to them. And it's a general prohibition, and it has at present 2 exceptions that were discussed by the committee last session. As DEP described in its briefing today, there's a 3rd exception being added here for foam that's intended for a marine defense application, where the US DoD requires that PFAS added foam to be used. And then this language at the bottom is just a general application to the prohibition section that authorizes DEP to require any manufacturer of a firefighting or fire suppressing foam, regardless of whether or not it has PFAS added to it, to certify that the foam either does not contain intentionally added PFAS or is accepted from that prohibition under paragraphs A, B, or this new C. That is the entirety of the committee bill.
Thank you, Dan. And I'll remind everybody what our intent is to vote out of the committee a bill. We're not actually voting on the bill today. Representative Tucker.
I move that we have the language which Dan has reviewed with us, particularly the exception for BIW. I move that we ask for permission of the legislature to have a committee bill using that same language, which will come back to us for a public hearing.
Representative Hanley.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Wonderful. And any further discussion? All right, I believe we're ready for a vote.
Sorry.
Okay.
Excuse me, Senator Brenner,
Yes.
Representative Tucker,
Yes.
Senator Bennett, absent. Senator Carney,
Yes.
Representative Boyle,
Yes.
Representative Toole, absent. Representative Bloom,
Yes.
Representative Hanley,
Yes.
Representative Hanley, Representative O'Connor,
Yes.
Representative Gramlich,
Yes.
Representative Dudera,
Yes.
Representative Bell,
Yes.
Representative Ziegler.
Yes.
All members present voted in the affirmative.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the three of you for joining us this afternoon. And I do apologize for not getting our timing lined up as we had planned initially. So sorry about that. I underestimated how long our public hearings would go this morning. I think that brings us to the end of our work for today, unless I'm forgetting something that someone wants to make sure we talk about before we part ways for the afternoon. Representative Tucker.
I would like to hear from our OPLA analyst what additional language reviews might be coming down the pike.
So unless you want to discuss having electronic reviews of any of the language or fiscal reviews we still need to do, we would be anticipating bringing back everything that's ready for review, final amendment language and or fiscal notes, the next time the committee meets on March 14th, Monday, March 14th. And that would include all of the bills that have been voted and not yet reported out, which would be, give me a second, should be 1616, 1639, 1875, which we still just need a fiscal on, 1911, 1964, 1970, 1974, and 1979.
I lost track of you at the 1900s. You listed 1875 and then 1911. Could you finish the list?
Sure. I closed it already. 1875, 1911, 1964, 1970, 1974, and 1979. A number of those you voted on the actual amendment language, so the final language should not come as much of a surprise. When we have the fiscal note and the final language, we'll bring it back, but I will try to bring on the 14th whatever I have.
Thank you very much.
And for committee members, planning purposes, we are going to ask for the presiding officer's permission to continue to meet after March 11th. So if you could plan on March 14th, which is Monday, a week from today, and depending on how far we get, we may need other Monday and Wednesday mornings to finish our work. So stay tuned. And just another reminder before we part, tomorrow at 2 p.m. is our AFA budget hearing for the ENR committee's business. That's all I have. Any other